Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Please introduce yourselves.
Eric Goode.
Jeremy McBride.
And did you guys both do Tiger King as well?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of came in towards the tail end. I remember meeting you about
Keep
this.
it this close to your face.
Okay.
Yeah. It's okay. You can scoot your.
Yeah.
It moves and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I met Eric kind of towards the tail end of filming Tiger King. Yeah, that was kind of the first experience I had with
You guys like struck lightning with that because it came right at the pandemic, where everyone's locked at home, and everyone was like, "What the fuck is going on with these guys?"
Yeah, captive cats and captive audience.
And just crazy people. And then your new show, Chimp Crazy, is like basically along the same vein. And it is so odd how nutty these animal people are. These people that have captive animals at their home. It's such a bizarre. I would like to see like a psychologist, like a clinical psychologist, do an examination of what type of personality wants to have these enormous wild animals captive in their homes.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's incredible, and of course that's what interests us because I'm an animal guy, but you have to have interesting people to tell a good story.
Well, we are animals.
We are animals.
That's the weird part about it. We're this bizarre animal that likes to keep animals in cages.
And some people think we should have been in the same genus as apes.
Yeah.
But of course there's something called religion and dominion. And of course, we're not animals. We're not apes.
Well, we certainly are. I mean, those people, they still believe in religion. But, the reality of observable science is also there. So, unfortunately, we're just a weird animal. We're the fucking weirdest ones. But the show Chimp Crazy, I just finished episode 3 last night, and we got to number 4, and my daughter wanted to watch number 4. I'm like, I don't think I could do it. I was so bummed out after episode 3. I was like, oh, my God. I don't want to give away anything for people who haven't watched the series yet. I highly recommend it. It's really fucking good. But episode 3, man, it's like there's something about. First of all, this is one of the rare times where I'm fully with PETA. When it's like. When you side with PETA on things, it's like this has got to be an egregious example of something absolutely horrific. And the one situation where the woman who was so drunk kept the chimp and then it attacked her daughter, and the whole thing is like at the end of the show, it's like, oh my God, I don't know if I could keep doing this.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you mentioned PETA because I'm not fully aligned with PETA on a number of things, but in this case, I am aligned with PETA, but just to touch on PETA, I work with reptiles and I try to save turtles and tortoises, which actually are the most endangered group of animals, along with primates.
Turtles and tortoises, really?
If you think about the percentage that are on the brink of extinction, over half of primates are on the brink of extinction, and over half of turtles and tortoises.
I had no idea.
But where I'm not aligned with PETA is when you have to make a choice between, eradicating a rat that's killing off the last Galapagos tortoises, or eradicate a mongoose that was introduced that's killing off, an iguana in the Caribbean. I will make that choice. PETA basically views it as the rat has rights just as much as the tortoise, and I'd like to have the tortoise around for future generations. So I'm not always aligned with PETA, but in this case, yes.
Well, they have a background with the Animal Liberation Organization, which essentially doesn't think that any animals should be captive. And I do understand their point. But then you have Carl. how's Carl gonna not have an owner? How's little Carl over there not gonna be fed? I mean, do you want French bulldogs to go extinct? Because they will. They can't even breed.
If you did a poll and asked how many people at PETA keep dogs, it's like 95%.
Which is crazy.
So it's a little hypocritical if they don't want people to have pets.
Well, it's one of those things. It's like how it starts and how it's going. Like where did it start from? And I see look, all dogs are a horrible misjustice that's been done to wolves. Like somehow or another, we have become friends with wolves and turned them into these strange things. But the reality of life in 2024 is we have dogs, and dogs need owners and they love you and it's a great relationship. But
it's in their genetics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they've been
Thousands
thousands of years.
Right. It's like saying that we should be going back to chimps.
Yeah. Sure.
We should live in the jungle. Yeah. We should live in trees, which is also crazy.
What is it, Erica? Chimps are more like chimps than we are human? Is that?
Chimps are closer to us than they are gorillas because we are the subfamily of chimpanzees, which are called hominins. And yes, chimpanzees are closely related to us more than any other ape.
Yeah.
But it's, back to what you said a minute ago about making these movies, I just want to touch on, why we do this. Because a lot of people miss the point of Tiger King even.
There's a point?
Yeah, there was a point.
I think I missed it.
Well, we were really trying to get Joe Exotic elected president. That was the point. No, but the point was that a lot of docs, man, are great. And they are really informative, but they preach to the converted, people that already know the issue, like the Cove, and they're great.
Right.
And, what we wanted to do is preach to people that don't know about the issues. So you had to get a lot of eyeballs on it to make a difference, right?
Right.
So that was sort of the goal of both Tiger King and Chimp Crazy in the end.
This episode is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Running a business ain't easy, especially a small business. You have to wear a lot of different hats to keep things running smoothly. And when you have to do everything on top of hiring, it can be a nightmare. Thankfully, there's a place you can go to for help, ZipRecruiter. And even better, you can try it for free right now at ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. ZipRecruiter does most of the work for you to make hiring more manageable. And the secret to their success is their powerful matching technology. As soon as you post your job, ZipRecruiter will get to work finding qualified candidates for your role. Experience faster, easier hiring with ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Well, I think you definitely did that. I mean, I had a joke in one of my earlier comedy specials about Texas and tigers. And I don't know the statistics, but there's more tigers in captivity in Texas than all the wild of the world in private collections.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
We were just
Not
talking
in
about
zoos, in people's yards.
Yeah.
There's these wacky people that have fucking tigers in their backyards.
Yeah.
And there's thousands of tigers in Texas that are in people's yards.
Yeah. Yeah, that statistic has been going around for a long time. That may change. But yes, they used to say there's more than 3,000 tigers in Texas, and there's less than 3,000 tigers in the wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They think there's 5,000 in Texas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Believe it.
Well, there's also other animals that are in Texas that are exotics, like scimitar oryx, which is very rare in the wild and is endangered in the wild, but is so common in Texas that you can hunt them.
Yeah.
And they have them on these enormous ranches, 30,000, 50,000 acres, and they're wild, but they live wild. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Like, if they could figure out a way to actually ensure that tigers could be kept in a 60,000 acre preserve, and you had adequate funding to where the fences were completely monitored every day to make sure that they don't get out and kill people, you're talking about a different thing. But what you're mostly getting is small enclosures of tortured animals who are fed cold meat. And that is not what they want. It's not what nature intended them. They're the cleanup crew. They're everything that has a limp, anything that's slow. They keep populations down. They make sure there's not an overpopulation problem of ungulates. That's what tigers do. That's what they do in the wild. And so all of their instincts, everything, their essence of their being is all stifled by being captive. You know, we were talking about giraffes, that they're the only animal that I don't have a problem with at the zoo. Because they're so chill. Yeah. They're so chill. Babies feed them. When my daughters were young, we'd take them to the zoo, and you could hold a piece of lettuce, and the giraffe with his giant fucking head that's like as big as this table would come over and gently take the lettuce with their tongue. And we're so confident that they have no aggression towards people that we allow little babies to feed giraffes. Yeah. Giraffes don't seem to have a problem at the zoo. They seem to be totally relaxed with it. Yeah. But there's a lot of animals where it's nothing but torture.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's incredible that in the day that we live in 2024, that and the consciousness of the culture, that we still keep certain animals in zoos that really are miserable. Those are things like the whales and cetaceans and elephants are not happy in zoos, and
monkeys
and most primates are not happy in zoos. And I think there are animals that lend themselves more, I like to say, to being in captivity.
Yes, like giraffes. I think giraffes is the only example.
Yeah, or a giant tortoise, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Solitary.
That's a good example too. Solitary. Well, even just animals that just don't. They're just happy that there's no predators.
Sure.
And then they're relaxed.
Yeah.
But the last time I went to a zoo, my daughters were younger, but not like babies, and we were in Denver, and I was there for a gig, and we went to the zoo, and oh man. To this day, it haunts me. Yeah. There's this primate enclosure, and this one monkey was just screaming, like in agony, like being tortured, just holding on to the bars and screaming because he was by himself and just this tiny little cage, and there was nowhere to go, and people were just staring at him all day, and he was just losing his fucking mind. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't, because I felt super hypocritical because I've always had like an issue, because it's animal prison. It's animal prison for animals that did nothing wrong.
I was at the Singapore Zoo once, which is a good zoo for zoos in Asia. It's one of the best zoos, maybe the best zoo, along with the Taipei Zoo. But there was a polar bear at the Singapore Zoo. This is like 95% humidity, 90 degrees, and it was green because it was covered in a film of algae. And so the polar bear was literally a green. And you just say to yourself, like, there's just, if you have a zoo in Alaska, you could maybe have a polar bear. But Phoenix, Arizona, Singapore.
But even if you have a zoo in Alaska, polar bears are the one bear that doesn't eat anything but animals. So polar bears are extraordinarily predatory, and they have hunting instincts. Yeah. So all day they just want to roam and hunt. Yeah. And I drove limos for a while, and I had this gig once in New Hampshire, and I was on my way home, and I stopped just because I do this job where I drop somebody off. It was a few hours away, and on the way back, I got lunch, and I saw this zoo. So let me just check this zoo out. And I went to this zoo. There's this little shitty zoo in like somewhere I think it was in Massachusetts. And there was this polar bear in this tiny little enclosure just going in circles. Like he was fucking crazy, just going in circles. Tiny little enclosure. And I was like, what is this? Why is this okay? Like what is this? This is not a life. This is terrible. It's terrible.
We with this current, there's another project we've been working on for equal time to Chimp Crazy, and you've been spending more time in over 10 years, which loosely covers the exotic animal wildlife trade, international wildlife trade. And through that interest, we've had this incredible opportunity to explore all of these, moral truths about American zoos. For us, one thing that was so deeply fascinating, I think there's something like 242 accredited zoos in this country. 750 million people visit zoos annually, which is more than the 5 major sporting events combined. Oh.
Wow.
The way in which zoos function, it's like the 80-20 rule. There's 5 or 10 that contribute the majority of the income that cover most of the zoos, and they run like entertainment complexes, like amusement parks, and very little money goes back into conservation. Now, there's a lot of zoos that are doing great stuff, and I think the things that we're learning about is the educational value of zoos for kids is no longer as what they intended it to be. I think there's great things that they do, but there's nothing proven around, zoos are educational facilities for animals.
Well, what really rocked zoos was the film Blackfish.
Yeah.
And they suddenly went, wait a minute,
Yeah.
the public doesn't like us? And they started putting into effect all these kind of new programs for animal welfare, and particularly for bears, like polar bears, like what you just mentioned. And they have a new word, it's not so new anymore, called enrichment, which means that you give a bear something to do so it doesn't do what you were just saying. You put their food in ice so they have to work to get it out. You put their food in a ball. You make them have to do things. But, that was the big shakeup for zoos in terms of animal welfare. And now, of course, it's still evolving, and zoos are scared when they see Tiger King and even Chimp Crazy.
But Joe's daughter's grandkids will still see orcas at SeaWorld.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I mean, because
they live a long time.
They live a long time, and the SeaWorld,
maybe not granddaughters, but
okay. But I say it more.
Yeah.
I have little boys. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I think it's particularly interesting to kind of go through this experience because they're obsessed with animals, and you're kind of educating them on these kind of moral issues surrounding animals, the anthropomorphic characters that are created to describe the feelings and where they should live and how they should feel. And kids relate with them in some form of a bridge to humanity, I believe. And we, you ask this fundamental question when you go to the zoo, hey, where did all the animals come from? No one really begs to think that question.
Well, where he's going right now is the sort of a big part of our next documentary, which is about the illegal animal trade, but also zoos were complicit in that for a very long time, maybe still. So anyway, sort of going on to another.
Sorry. But the zoo thing. I mean, you're into the. You get emotional on this, and I what's really cool about this kind of medium that we're in. We have access to all this information and all these people over large decades of work in conservation and zoos and PETA and legislation, laws. It's really I just love the idea of synthesizing this information to a point in today's context, which is, it's when you go to a zoo, no one seems to ask where the animals comes from.
Right.
It is a very simple idea that many people miss the point of when they go there. Now, I'm not anti-zoo totally either, and I have no real position or credibility to also suggest that. But I do think I'm interested in asking those questions of what we can do to make these institutions better.
Yeah, I mean, for sure they should be bigger. I mean, there should be a size requirement. You should have to have a certain amount of acres for each individual species so that they don't, like we were talking about the chimp enclosure at the LA Zoo, they bite each other's fingers off, and they need space. They need space and they need activities, and ideally what we should do is emulate their wild existence. But then you have this moral question of, are we going to let goats into the tiger cage and just let them sort it out? Because that's really what they want.
Yeah.
What lions want to do is chase down a wildebeest and eat it.
Yeah.
And instead, what we do is we slide a tray underneath their cage. And that's torture for them. It really is. It's torture for them to have an enclosed space where it's small. It's torture for them to not be able to express their natural instincts. I mean, it's one thing if you're talking about something like the thylacine, right, where they kept them in captivity and the last known survivors, and you had this thing and like, wow, now we have video of this thing and now it doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. So the zoos were like the last hope to try to keep this thing from going extinct. And it may not be extinct. There's a lot of
seed banks.
Yeah, the Tasmanian tiger. Yeah, that was that eerie footage of the last ones.
Yeah, they think there might actually be living specimens that are alive, and there's.
Well, in this state, they're bringing them back.
Well, I know Forrest Gallant.
Yeah, I was just about to bring up Forrest.
I also have colleagues that have gone looking for thylacines in the highlands of New Guinea. So far, people anecdotally say, yes, there might be a thylacine.
Right.
but it's unlikely. But there might be. But yeah.
Well, they're very hard to find. I mean, like, try finding a wolverine. There's wolverine populations are pretty healthy, but good luck finding one. They're very, very, very difficult to find unless you spend an enormous amount of time alone in the bush.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So, and then you're dealing with thylacines. You're dealing with a very unpopulated area that's extremely hostile to people. But there are anecdotal sightings, and hopefully that thing does exist. And I would love for Forrest to be the guy who finds it because he spent so much time looking for it. But other than a dying species, I can't see a good argument for keeping these things. It used to be that a zoo existed before there was videos, right? So if you wanted to find out about a lion, the only way a child could see a lion was to go to the zoo and go, "Oh my God, that's a lion! Look at that! Look at that lion!" And the kids and it is educational for children, but at what cost? And are there better resources now? And I think video is a much better resource. It's much better to see lions in the wild.
Yeah. No, I mean, of course, zoos were originally created it was like good civic planning, 150, 200 years ago, like, to have a park, a zoo, a library when you were building a city.
Right.
So they were really just built as, a good city needs to have a zoo, it's entertainment, and they weren't really designed to be, have anything to do with conservation or anything to do with animal welfare. But yeah, today, like you mentioned, the oryx here in Texas, there are species that have either gone what we call biologically extinct, which means that one animal can't find another, they're virtually extinct, or they are extinct in the wild, and zoos may offer some hope for those animals where they can put them into what's called assurance colonies and try to maintain, genetically diverse groups in a zoo for the day that one day you could return it to the wild.
Right.
There's maybe a reason to have animals in captivity.
How much success has there been in returning animals to the wild, though?
Well, where we live in California.
But you just did it with the eastern box turtle in New Jersey.
No. Back to the example he's talking about is like California condors, California condors, or black-footed ferrets, or animals that, the whatever it's called. There's an endemic horse that they've done some work with, but yeah, it's much less than it should be putting animals back into the wild that went extinct or went virtually extinct. Much less than it should be.
Yeah, it should. I mean, it should be a priority. With certain animals specifically.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a really good success story of an animal that went back into the wild and it was really successful. California condors, the problem is they've reintroduced them into the Great Grand Canyon in Arizona. When I was young in the 70s, there was maybe 28 of them left in the wild. They brought them into captivity. Today, there's probably hundreds in the wild, but at a very expensive price tag, because what made them go extinct in that case was the lead bullets that kill a deer. The condor would eat the deer and then die from the lead. So the condors, to use that example, there's just a lot of management to keep them alive in the wild.
I think there's some dispute about that.
About which part?
About whether or not it's the lead from the bullets that was killing them.
That's what they say, but maybe.
Yeah, I was reading something recently about that it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't attribute to you think about the number of animals that are shot with a bullet that aren't recovered. It's so small.
Interesting. Yeah.
That it doesn't make sense that it would be enough to kill off these animals, and there's probably some other factors that we are not considering.
I believe that because a condor in a day, not to go off the charts on a condor, but a condor in a day can travel 400 miles in the thermals looking for, a carcass.
Right.
And I would suspect that, the fact that there's just less carcasses out there
right. That's
might
what I was
be part
say.
of it.
I think that's the argument. I think the argument is there's less predators and there's less prey. Yeah. Right? So you have a decrease. So like California, for example, like you have a fairly small deer population because you have so many animals that kill deer, right? So you have California has a lot of coyotes, and California has a lot of mountain lions. And there's a lot of people where I used to live in the hills that did not like coyotes. I'm like, do you like rats? Okay. Well, if you don't like rats, you should like coyotes. Yeah, don't leave your dog outside because your dog's going to get, and my daughter's puppy got killed by a coyote. And I've had chickens killed by coyotes.
But ranchers hate coyotes more than anything.
And they kill fawns. They kill
them.
Yeah, they kill baby cows. They kill baby everything. That's just what they do, and that's their job. But there's an ecosystem, and that's a part of the ecosystem. And what's really unnatural is ranching. Okay.
But there forever, there was a bounty on coyotes where if you brought in 2 ears, you got like $1, and people would bring in 100 sets of ears and get $100. I mean, they were vilified. When I grew up in California, the ranchers next to us, which were sheep ranchers, because sheep are dumb and coyotes can get sheep easier than calves. They would trap the coyote with those horrible traps. They'd pour gasoline on them. They'd light them on fire and let them run off burning. I mean, they hate coyotes, which is really unfair.
They're cool. They're just not cool if they eat your cat. But they're a fascinating animal. I mean, I remember when I first saw them, I moved to California in '94, and I was staying at, do you know what the Oakwood Gardens are? It's like those they're pre-furnished apartments that you just rent, like people that are like sort of transient, just moving in. They allow you to like have a place before you get a place.
Apartment,
And I was driving, so it was in Burbank, and I was driving down the street, and I was like, "Who are these fucking dogs? Like, what's going on? What are these dogs running around?" And then I drove up. I had never seen a coyote before.
Oh, wow.
I was like, "That's a coyote?
Yeah.
Oh my God, there's coyotes on the streets."
Yeah.
And that was pretty rare then, but 30 years later, it became insanely common. I would rarely go. I lived in a fairly rural area where I lived in California. I lived about an hour outside the city, and I had a lot of acres, and it was cool to live out there. But you experience a lot of wildlife, and I saw coyotes almost every day. Almost every day.
Yeah, they look like a mangy, motley, skinny dog.
That's right.
But they're cool. There's something cool about coyotes. But the reality of coyotes, I don't know if you know why they're so successful, but one of the reasons why is because they're the only. So red wolves can interbreed with coyotes, and that you get the coy wolf. But gray wolves do not breed with coyotes; they just kill them. And so, because the gray wolf, which lived in California and lived all over the West Coast, was the predominant predator, the coyotes had to develop a way of surviving. And the adaptation was when they call out, when they yell out in the night and they're trying to do roll call and figure out how many guys are around, when one is missing, the female will have a change to her reproductive system where she will develop more pups. And then they will expand their territory. So because they were persecuted by wolves, they expanded their territory. So now when people came in and started killing off the wolves, which they did successfully, but they were never able to kill off coyotes because of this trait. So coyotes are now in every single city in the United States. This was not the case just 30 years ago.
They're what we call, there's a word for that, it's called subsidized predators. And these are animals that do better around man. And crows are one of those animals, raccoons are one of them, coyotes, and they're weirdly can thrive and do better around human activity than a lot of other animals. And so coyotes are one of those.
Because of garbage.
Yeah.
Because of
Garbage and
garbage, because
pets.
of water. We bring in water in arid areas. And so they're highly adaptable creature. And just for the record, I do like coyotes, and I listen to them almost every night having a tailgate party behind my house.
They're cool.
They're cool. And
They're interesting.
they make the eeriest noise together. They caught something.
Yeah, but I'm sure you've seen that video from Woodland Hills where this man was unloading his car and a coyote came and snatched his toddler, like right in front of him.
Yeah.
It's hard. They're fucking predators, right? And you have to be careful.
Yeah.
Little things and little people and animals will get eaten by them, and that is what they do.
Like dingoes in Australia do that.
Right. Dingo ate my body. There's no doubt that we live in complex ecosystems, and we do not like the idea of them. We've developed these bizarre establishments called cities. And in these cities, we have removed ourselves from nature. And, if you go to the mountains of Colorado, people are well aware of mountain lions. They're well aware of bears. They have to lock their garbage up. They have they have like a neighborhood email list where they talk about like bears broke into this guy's car and everybody's on the lookout. But they understand they're living in this system. They're living in this ecosystem. Yeah. Most people in the United States that live in urban areas have no idea that they're in an ecosystem because we've essentially done some very bizarre stuff and isolated ourselves from nature, which is one of the reasons why we have this strange idea that we are not animals and that we are not a part of nature. Yeah. It's just weird. We're fucking weird. We're weird in our justifications. We're weird in what we allow ourselves to do.
Yeah, that's back to the chimpanzees. That was one of the things that I just couldn't ever, I couldn't ever connect with this woman, Tanya, that kept this chimp and tried to explain to her, that we are chimps, effectively. And, and she just, took the page out of, Genesis, where she just said, I'm not, we're not animals. This is an animal and I can own it like property. Anyway, that was just one of the things she just never really fully understood.
Well, to be kind, she's not bright. She's not a bright woman, not a well-read woman, unfortunately. And this seems to be part of the theme of all these folks, which is weird, And then you got the one guy in Tiger King that's essentially running like a little sex cult. Right, that guy.
Doc Antle.
Yeah, and then you've got the Tiger King himself.
Joe.
You got Joe Exotic, who is also kind of running a strange little sex cult. But, he's just got all this personality, and he's so interesting and fascinating. And if he wasn't in jail, it's really unfortunate, because if he wasn't in jail, he'd be a very popular person.
He hasn't even seen the
show,
which is
Can you
amazing.
imagine?
Yeah.
If he was,
well, he's trying to get Donald Trump to exonerate him, and pardon him. I mean, he was constantly after I had talked about Tiger King.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I get messages from that guy. I don't know how he's giving me messages. I'm assuming it's someone who works for him.
Yeah.
But I get messages all the time. Like, you've got to help get him out, put him on your podcast, do this, do that. Like,
well, he also has communication in jail. He gets somehow he's able to get a phone. He's doing video calls and stuff.
Well, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
But
there was a moment. There was a moment when we were filming this kind of like second installment of Tiger King where we covered this pardon, the presidential pardon. There's a real shot where Joe was actually on a list, supposedly, that Trump was going to like but
hilarious.
It's hilarious.
So I don't remember exactly what the specifics of his accusation. So was he caught trying to hire someone to whack that lady?
Yeah.
He was.
Twice, yeah.
And that lady, is there any truth to this idea that she whacked her husband?
Carol Baskin. There's a lot of circumstantial, I wouldn't say maybe evidence, but it's sort of who else?
It's not clean.
Who else? And it was either, it feels as if it was her or members of her family, and they were the only ones to gain. And so, yeah.
What a great way to dispose of a body.
I don't know how she disposed of the body. It's nice to.
Well, you have meat grinders on the premises, and you have enormous predators. On premises, and you feed them a tiger.
Don't you think the only thing I would say, Eric, is the circumstances surrounding the change in the will? I mean, who alters it to account for disappearance?
Upon my disappearance.
It's a very, very strange.
No one says that. Yeah.
And isn't there like a disparity in the handwriting as well?
Yeah, we did handwriting experts. We did the entire thing to prove otherwise.
It's also just when she talks about it.
But Joe, back to Joe, Joe Exotic. I was on the phone with him a lot up until he was convicted. From prison, and he just was convinced he was going to be exonerated and not convicted. And the feds offered him a deal, which was something like 6 or 7 years. You can plea or you can go to court.
He'd probably be out by now.
Yeah,
I was just going to say he'd be out now. And so he was so convinced that he was going to win, which is so delusional. But yeah, poor Joe would be out right now had he made that deal.
By the way, how crazy is that you could plot to kill somebody and let you out in 4 years? Like, I know you've been locked up with a bunch of murderers and thieves, but I'm sure you're a better person now.
Yeah. Well, it's plot and
You've
then
learned.
intent. Paying someone to go do something.
Right. There's quite a few steps involved.
But yes, Joe's now pro-Trump again. He was pro-Biden when
Was he?
Trump
Yeah.
didn't.
Because he was trying to get Biden to pardon him. They wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, but Trump might.
Yeah.
Especially this time around.
Yeah.
Just for fun.
Well, let's hope Tanya doesn't go to prison. I don't wish that on Tanya.
I haven't seen episode 4, so I don't know. But when you guys were filming, again, spoiler alert, please, if you're watching the series, stop right now and scoot ahead by a few minutes. When they found that Tonka was in the basement, and when I saw when you guys are filming it, I was like, Jesus Christ, this lady is so crazy. She's showing everybody.
I know.
She has,
I know.
with like all due respect, she just does not seem like a smart person, and she's almost like if you gave her an IQ test, and then gave a chimp an IQ test, it'd be a toss-up. I mean, I think that's part of the problem. I don't think this lady understands the consequences of what she's doing, just like she doesn't understand how crazy her eyelashes look. Like all of it is just, there's some fuses that are missing, some wires that aren't connected. Yeah. And then because of the fact that at one point in time, at least, it was illegal for her to do what she was doing. And they become accustomed to being able to have, and then their identity revolves around they're the person that has all the monkeys and all the chimpanzees. It was just fucking weird.
Well, it's still legal.
Is still?
It's still legal.
I thought they changed it.
No, there's no federal law preventing ownership
Jesus
of chimpanzees.
Christ, you can own a fucking chimp
Correct.
still?
There's 20 or so states legally you can do it.
Oh my God. I thought
Missouri's one of them.
Oh my God.
But, background, we spent about 4 years making this documentary series.
First of all, how'd you start? How do you find out about these people?
Go ahead.
And how do you get, after Tiger King, how do you get anybody to talk to you on camera?
I've known a lot of animal people, Joe, but I did not know about monkey moms. And along the course of making Tiger King, I started filming some monkey moms, and I mean, like as you see in Chimp Crazy, you just can't make them up. And so after Tiger King, I just thought, let's scratch the surface. Let's check into these monkey moms again. And so it's these women that dress up their monkeys like dolls, like Joan Benet Ramsey, like a little pageant doll, and they want them to be kids. And they seem to have the same pathology over and over and over. There's a lot of monkey moms out there that we did not film, and they have annually something called a monkey ball, where they all come together with their monkeys. Anyway, we discovered them in the course of making Tiger King, and
my grandmother had a monkey.
Yeah, we hear
My
the story a
grandmother
lot.
had a monkey.
Yeah, we hear the story a lot.
That she kept in the attic.
Really?
Yeah, the monkey's name was Chi-Chi, and Chi-Chi used to eat gum. So you give Chi-Chi a piece of gum, Chi-Chi would unwrap the gum and put the gum in his mouth or her mouth. I don't remember if it was a boy or a girl.
Do you know what kind of monkey?
I do not. I was
Okay.
very small.
Yeah, yeah.
I was very young at the time, and I remember she had to get rid of it because it bit my cousin.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens.
Yeah.
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 But Chi-Chi couldn't be around anybody other than my grandmother.
Yeah.
My grandmother was very eccentric.
Yeah, and they're territorial, and they're protective of their owner. So when I was young in the 70s and 60s, 70s, 80s, you could buy a monkey in virtually any pet store across the United States.
Oh my God!
And thank God people realized, like your grandmother, they're not good pets.
You could buy them in the newspaper.
Yeah, and they're not good pets.
Well,
And
I think my grandmother, after her kids were grown, she just decided she wanted a kid forever. If I had to guess.
Wow.
Yeah, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
No, that's our kind of consensus on a lot
Yeah.
of it.
Also, a kid that doesn't talk back.
Yeah. It's a great book you'd love. It's by this guy who had a store in New York, Henry Treflick. It's called They Don't Talk Back. And it's these kind of chronicles of his experiences, through the last, it was
This was a
40s to
big
70s.
exotic animal dealership that existed up until the 70s in New York City. But they had everything: chimps, gorillas, elephants, and they sold stuff to the private sector and zoos. But yeah,
I mean, you could walk into a Woolworth, right? And and buy monkeys.
They still, to this day, catch people with large animals in their apartments in New York City.
Yeah.
Like, wasn't there one real recently where a guy had a large reptile?
Venomous snakes, yeah. Right?
Was it snakes?
The venomous snake bite, Eric?
Some guy.
remember.
Well, there's that one guy. I think it was in Harlem who had a tiger in his house.
Yeah.
And there's a crazy image of the cops going up the fire escape and the tiger's in the window.
Yeah.
And you see the tiger baring its fangs in the window. And you're like, that glass is that fucking thin, man. That is so crazy. This thing is trapped in this like regular apartment with regular glass.
Yeah.
Like at any moment, the only thing keeping that thing out is it doesn't know that it could just smash that and get on that fire escape and just go run through the streets.
Yeah.
It just,
Crazy.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But the bizarre thing is that there's humans that want those. They want those.
Yeah.
I mean,
the tiger thing is more of like kind of a macho thing, I think. If I had to,
what about Carol then? She's a woman.
Yeah, she's kind of an anomaly. It's funny.
But she liked the lesser-known cats,
I
right?
interviewed Tippi Hedren, in the course of doing all of this, and her, Xanadu. It's called Shambhala with all of her cats. And I know you've talked about this about Melanie Griffith growing up with lions.
And that crazy movie Roar.
Yeah. And that movie Roar.
The bed photograph is fantastic.
Oh my God, that movie Roar. But when I interviewed Tippi Hedren, literally on her property in California, she lives with all these tigers and lions. She built a museum for herself. So she's got her own museum, the Tippi Hedren Museum, where I interviewed her. But there are some women, Tippi Hedren, Carol Baskin, but
mostly a macho thing.
Generally speaking, I think it's more men. Yeah.
Well, I guarantee if you go through the Texas private collections, there's a bunch of good old boys.
Yeah. Exactly.
I believe that.
Probably.
Yeah.
Got some oil money.
You've got canned ranches in Texas.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of canned ranches, which is very odd, and some of them are fairly small, like a couple 100 acres.
Yeah.
And they keep animals there.
Yeah.
It's in my mind, what that is agriculture. Okay, it's just you're doing a different form of deer agriculture. You're not really hunting. Hunting to me is you go into the wild, you go into the woods, and you experience real nature, and it's fascinating. It's enthralling. There's something about. It's also so lonely. There's something about being in those mountains just puts you in check. None of that exists in a canned ranch.
Yeah, canned ranch, you can go shoot, like in South Africa, a lion.
Right.
And the lion was raised in a kind of domestic situation.
And recently released.
Yeah, so it just sits there.
Yeah.
There's no sport in it. Hunting in the United States, for elk or deer, there's a lot of things people don't know about hunting, which is, one, just obviously, obvious statistic is that more wildlands are protected because of hunting. So, you're killing a deer, but you're protecting all the other stuff.
Well, the amount of money, because of the Pittman-Robertson Act, the amount of money that gets, I think it's 10% of all sales of outdoor activities gets donated towards wildlife preservation. And this is the reason why we can have these enormous national forests where you have wildlife biologists establish what the healthy numbers of these animals are and how many people can go hunt them. And they also know, because you have to, when you, like, say if you shoot a deer, you have to register that you shot the deer. You have a tag. They make sure that your tag is right. You got the right species. You got the right sex, the whole deal. And so they have a very accurate number of how many animals in there, and they spend a lot of money doing this. And these wildlife biologists do an absolutely incredible job. There's more white-tailed deer in this country right now than there were when Columbus landed.
Wow.
Part of that is because of agriculture. That's where it gets weird. So agriculture, particularly, I have a good buddy of mine who is he's an archer, a professional archer, and he lives in Iowa. I always get those confused. And in Iowa, it's all farmlands, right?
Yeah.
And they have enormous deer, and they set these ranches up. He has a place that's like 600 acres. It's all, there's no fences. The animals come and go. But they establish these food plots, and they put these things in to make it a good place for deer to be so they can hunt them.
Yeah.
So it's this weird sort of
planned community.
Sort of ethical bastardization of the wild, right? It's like dealing with the reality of what you have. You have untold thousands and thousands of monocrop agriculture acres. So thousands and thousands of acres of Monsanto corn. And they're all, these deer thrive there. Because when they chop down the corn, they don't chop it all down. And, these deer, they go there after fresh feedings. They go there, you see them eating corn, and they eat grass. There's grass everywhere. There's plenty and plenty of food. And a very low number of predators. Like Iowa does not have they don't have wolves. They don't have a lot of animals that would sort of balance out the population of these animals. And so you have insane amounts of car accidents. Like when I was I went to visit my buddy there, and just driving from the airport to his house, we saw like 50 fucking deer. Yeah. And if you're going there around November, which is the rut, the men lose their mind. So the male deer, they're horny as hell. They're crazy, and the female are breeding. And the female are running from the males, and they're running right into traffic, and the males are running after them, and they're running right into traffic. It's kind of nuts. It's a really nutty situation because it only exists because there's no predators.
Wow.
So California has this bizarre model, and what California would like, California is, I think, the only state that doesn't have a fish and game department. They have fish and wildlife. And so they treat it very differently. Instead of treating it as a renewable resource where people can go and get their own food and hunt animals in the wild, they treat it like we should have the animals take care of themselves. And so that's why it's illegal to kill a mountain lion in California, and they have a large number of mountain lions. It probably underreported.
I have mountain lions on my property, all the time.
They're dangerous. They're underreported, and they are a predator, and they will kill people, and they have killed people. It's not often. But, if you're on a bike, the problem with being on a bike is you're moving a little too quick, and their instincts take over. They think you're trying to run from them, and they can't even help themselves. It's like a kitten with a ball of yarn, and their instincts clip in, and they just go chasing after it. But I've seen mountain lions in the wild, and it is a sobering moment when you stare into the eyes of one of those things. You're like, whoa.
What are you supposed to do?
Well, you can't do much, man.
Make a lot of noise.
You're not
supposed to run.
You don't run. If you have a weapon, you should really have that weapon ready, because they will jump you. Every now and then they jump people. There's a crazy video. Yeah, well, I believe 2 people were killed last year in the Pacific Northwest.
Of all the big cats, I think jaguars kill the least people,
which is crazy.
Which for some reason, but
they also live in the least populated areas.
For the most part, yeah. At mountain lions, yeah, of course they will kill someone, but typically they're not looking for people.
Right, they're not looking for people.
It's not like a tiger that has all its prey, get trapped by, the local people in India, and they have to go out and try to find prey, and it's people oftentimes.
And jaguars have to, at this point in time, have realized that people have bows and arrows and spears, and every now and then, if you go after a person, you can get jumped. And, so they probably like grizzly bears behave very differently in places where grizzly bears are hunted. So in the lower 48, it's illegal to hunt grizzly bears. So if they see you, if you run into them in the wrong, they're not going to run away. They might run towards you. Right. Especially if you surprise them, it's very dangerous. And that's why, and they will treat you as food if they're really hungry.
In the course of making Tiger King, I would interview people about tigers and how, what it's like keeping 100 tigers. And people would always say to me, I'd rather have 100 tigers than 1 chimp. And that's because chimps, and everyone thinks, tigers are so dangerous, but chimps can figure shit out. And one of the chronic problems keeping chimps is that they can figure out how to escape. And so you can never use a combination lock because they'll sit there all day and figure it out.
Oh, my God.
And you got to use oftentimes like 3 layers of locks. Yeah. And I'm just bringing it back to chimps because people think, it's a chimp, it's so cute, it's in the circus. Trust me, it's a lot easier to have a tiger act than a chimp act.
I could imagine. And also, when I was watching this lady's enclosure, I was looking at the steel that's drilled into wood, and I'm like, I could get out of that. Yeah. I could get out of the 100%. The way that thing is bolted into the woods, all you have to do is kick that door enough. Yeah. You kick that door hard enough, and that wood will give out. It's the wood that it looks like you're encaged in steel bars, but the steel bars are connected by wood. Wood's easy for a chimp to break. they're so much fucking stronger than us.
Yeah,
if that thing knew that it could just grab those bars and slam and slam,
it would have worked on that all day. Yeah,
100% it would have got through.
Yeah,
you would have had to figure out a way, way, way better cage, especially the one that she put in her home.
You know, I'll tell you a really weird story that I just never would have thought in a million years about a chimp. I was interviewing a guy in Kenya that had a chimpanzee, and the keeper was this blonde woman, and all the chimp ever saw was this blonde woman. So the guy gave the chimp Playboy, and then it graduated to porn. And the chimp, because it had never seen other chimps, it was raised in isolation, started thinking it was human, and started sexually identifying with this woman that was keeping it, and started becoming sort of addicted to pornography. So just to give you a weird story, I'm segueing.
Whoa!
But how crazy! And you know, like these chimps, they'll have a favorite show. Like I remember a group of them in South Africa. All they watched was Avatar. But anyway, back to sort of how
ironic,
weird it is to keep a chimpanzee. You don't have a tiger getting addicted to human pornography,
right?
Or watching Avatar all day long. So
anyway, they're too intelligent. They're just way too intelligent, especially as they get 5, 6, and 7 years old. They get really fucking dangerous. That lady in Connecticut, I had heard that she slept in the bed with the chimpanzee.
Well, that's where I was going.
Yeah.
One of the things we did not cover, which I always wanted to know more about, is what really is going on in that bed with that woman. I mean, I don't want to talk about it in too much detail here.
Well,
but you have to ask yourself.
Asking a question.
You have to ask yourself, like, how weird does it get? You know?
Right. I mean, how weird does it get? Wasn't she giving it Xanax and wine? Get that alone.
Oh, well, yeah,
And
you
Viagra?
You haven't seen the
What?
Yeah.
And Viagra?
She was giving it Viagra?
No, I'm joking.
Oh.
I think,
but who
You can't
knows?
joke about that. You're gonna get sued.
yeah, you cannot joke. But speaking of that, though, you saw the second episode. We obviously
I don't think chimps need Viagra.
no, they're very active.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny.
they're
Actually,
the biggest nuts.
I heard that a chimp can fuck 50 times a day.
That's
Yeah.
right.
In the
Well-
wild, I saw like.
Yeah.
So maybe they don't need Viagra. Okay.
Well, primates are very promiscuous, and chimpanzees in particular. If you notice that chimpanzees have the largest balls of any primate, and there's a reason for that. The more promiscuous the female chimpanzees are, the more sexually active the males become, and the bigger their testicles are.
Interesting.
Oh,
So there's like a
interesting.
direct correlation between the size of the male's testicles, and they think that exists with human beings as well, but it's a little more problematic to examine. But
So that's my problem.
yeah, if you're around a bunch of ladies that are a bunch of sluts, you might get fired up.
No wonder I never got married.
I think that with chimpanzees, you're dealing with these incredibly complex social structures. I'm sure you guys have seen Chimp Nation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good because it is a rare documentary that had this established element in that these scientists had been embedded in this group of chimpanzees for 20 years. And so these scientists had very specific rules. You do not look them in the eye. You don't get any closer than 20 yards. If they come towards you at 20, just move away. Don't ever have food. There's like a bunch of rules. And as long as you have those rules, they behave completely normally. And you're just a thing. You're like a tree or a bird or something they're not interested in, which is really interesting, right?
Yeah, amazing.
Because they got incredible footage of the social interactions. They got a detailed analysis of how they establish dominance and who's in control. And then we used to think it's always the biggest, strongest chimp, but no, it's not. It's ones that form unions and bonds and communities. Very interesting. It's so much like us.
Well, I think also what's just so amazing about that film is, and I give them a ton of credit, most people that go out to do a documentary don't have the capacity to film that many days. Like they covered that.
Yes.
I don't know. It was like hundreds of days or something.
yeah, years.
And years. And I
Yeah.
think, they really invested the time and they deserve the credit because they put in that amount of time. I mean, for us to do even, Chimp Crazy, we filmed how many days?
It's probably close to 250 days.
I mean, most people can't do that.
Right.
And so
I mean, it's incredible. Resource suck. Like, how much did it cost?
that's where I'm going.
Yeah, my God.
It's not a really-
But in order to make a documentary
Did
this way, you have to catch it while it's happening, contemporaneously. So you have to be there. If you snooze, you lose. If you're not there, you're not going to make Chimp Crazy.
Right. And
or Chimp, what's it called? Chimp Nation. Yeah.
Chimp Empire.
Empire.
Is that what it, yeah.
Well, see,
There's two, right?
Chimp Empire, right?
It's Chimp Empire. Is Chimp Nation another one?
Oh, Chimp Empire. I'm talking
this is
about.
the Netflix
Chimp
one.
Empire.
Yeah.
The way that, see, the thing about the difference between your show is you need someone who's compelling, and so you have to find someone and you what's her name again?
Tanya.
Crazy Tanya, and Joe Exotic. You need someone who's like the figurehead, like with the photo that you guys have on the promo of her laying down in the chimp behind her. It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. I mean, you need that nutty person to compel you because there's part of all of us that recognizes that thought would come into our minds, but then rational thought would go into play like, you can't do this, they're dangerous, they're big, they get older, you can't control them, what happens to them, it's not fair for them to be, and then you go, I don't want a chimp. But if you're dull-minded, if you got a 9-volt brain and you look at this like, I am going to take, they're more important to me than my own babies. Like when she says stuff like that, you're like, oh, well, you shouldn't even have a dog. Like, you definitely shouldn't be allowed to vote.
No, but it's interesting you say you have to find those characters, but you also have to find a story. And I mean, you can talk about this, is how wide a net we cast. Because after Tiger King, it wasn't like we just jumped into this chimp mom world. We were filming, Mark the Shark and women.
Yeah, we were interested.
I mean, it took a lot of time
in the animal human relationship in a variety of forms. I think we and you see in episode one of the first things we shot years before we even met Tanya was this woman, this part of the circus family, Pam Rosaire, watching 2001: Space Odyssey with her chimpanzee Chance. It's talk
Crazy.
about sobering experience. I'm, me and Carl distanced with Chance the chimpanzee, 15 years old, pounding basically a modified trailer home, the floor echoing. The loudness was of that sound on the floor was so loud I had to take my headset off.
Yeah, it was a lot scarier, and you were there. It was a lot scarier to film chimps than tigers. The crew didn't have a problem going into a tiger enclosure because the thing about tigers is, as long as they're about under the age 4, even though it looks like a full-grown tiger, they haven't gone through puberty yet. They haven't gotten the tiger mentality of killing you. But a chimp, anyway, the chimp filming was much more difficult.
Well, they're also like human characters and wiry, and you don't know what's going to happen. They're on these kind of leashes.
Well, it's also how they evolved. I mean, that's what kept them alive. If you watch Chimp Nation, it's like those sort of instincts is what keeps them alive.
Oh, sure. Very murderous.
Well, we didn't really know how murderous they were until Attenborough. When David Attenborough did that series, I think it was in the 90s, when he captured the chimps eating monkeys.
Yeah,
this is one of the things that when I had the guy from Chimp Nation on, I discussed it with him. He's like, how often do they eat monkeys? He's like, we couldn't even show it all. It would just be like the whole show would be chimps eating monkeys because that's what they want to do. They want to eat monkeys. That's their primary source of protein. Yeah. They like fruit. Fruit's great, but they also like monkeys.
They colobus monkeys, and they eat. I'm a reptile guy, and in the range of those chimps in the wild, there's a tortoise. And this tortoise, it's like our box turtles, but it's much bigger, but it's called a hingeback tortoise. And it literally closes up like a rock. Like you can't see it, any flesh. The chimps will grab that tortoise, and they'll just bang it against a tree and just crack it open like a cantaloupe.
Wow.
And I'm just saying that because, yes, they're really hardcore when it comes to the way they predate on other animals.
And they're about as strong as a 500-pound man.
That's about right, yeah.
Yeah, it's so insane for us. We had a chimp on the set of News Radio, like 96 or something like that. There was a baby chimp. It was a baby, and it was in a diaper. And this chimp climbed on my back and whacked me a couple of times in the back, just playing. It was just having fun. And I remember, first of all, the feeling of holding it is like it was made out of steel wires. It wasn't made out of like a baby. You pick up a baby. Babies are like soft, little. You pick up a 3-year-old, they're all soft little things, and you hold on to them, and they're weak. these things were strong as fuck, like in a bizarre way. We like to look at something that's close to our size and think, oh, I could probably overpower that. Oh, I know how to fight. I'll fight that fucking chimp off. No, you have zero chance. It's a different thing. Everything about it is different. The muscle structure is completely different. The tendon structure is completely different. And the amount of force it can generate
the arm leverage is pretty incredible.
but
they
it's
also
like-
want to fuck with you. They also want to...
I was just going to say, like people
pull
always
your
talk,
eyeballs
people
out.
always
Yeah.
talk about like, will a bear kill the lion, or will the bear kill the tiger? I think chimpanzees, and you're into obviously fighting, and I think they are the most diabolical fighters because. I don't know what a chimp would do to a grizzly, but a chimp has, goes after your genitals, your fingers, your face.
Yeah.
They know how to fuck you up like nothing else.
Yeah, they know how to debilitate you and take away what makes you a human.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they also have zero remorse. So they're like a human in that they can think, but they have zero empathy. And they're fucking dangerous.
I'm writing this. What was so fascinating, you'd think, knowing all this about chimps later, and remember this, Eric, we were talking about, well, there must be like reported human deaths in the United States with chimp attacks, and we couldn't find any.
It's only memes.
It's only little...
I mean, there are globally, but
globally,
somehow,
a lot of them in Africa, little kids get snatched and stuff.
Well, kids get eaten.
Kids get eaten.
Yeah.
But in the U.S., there has been no really human death caused by chimpanzee. Now, what was fascinating, and you haven't watched this yet, but in episode 4, we kind of go, it comes like from delusion to reality, and it's heavy. We filmed our first chimpanzee funeral. And what we didn't show, which I just remember this now, everyone that would come up to say their piece would share a story where they were attacked by that animal.
Oh, God.
It was so the kind of juxtaposition of this celebration of life and these attacks in this context of a situation they shouldn't have ever been in. It was kind of remarkable.
And animal attacks in general across the board in roadside zoos and private sector are completely underreported because people don't want their animals taken away. So if a tiger attacks someone and they have a huge laceration, they'll go to the hospital saying it was a chainsaw. Because the second they say it was my tiger or my chimp, they run the risk of losing that animal.
You also have the problem with less than extraordinary people being addicted to extraordinary circumstances. So if you have a boring ass fucking life in some middle of nowhere town, but you also have a lion, like all of a sudden,
you're cool.
Life's pretty interesting. I mean, and that's Joe Exotic, right?
Yeah.
Well, Joe Exotic, I think, is pretty smart. He's odd for sure, but intelligent. But in Tanya's case, like, what would that lady be like if she didn't have chimps? Like, it is the focal point of her life, to the point where she neglected her own biological children.
Yeah, it gives her an identity.
Yeah, in a weird way, in a very compelling way. And when people live boring ass lives, things like that seem like something that's who I am. Like, that's me, because it's extraordinary experiences from persons that are,
It's
where
like,
does that come from,
with
though?
Joe,
is it influence?
I think we like experiences, first of all. There's a part of evolution where human beings, part of our lust for innovation and for constant improvement of our environment and circumstances is we like extraordinary experiences. I think it's what made people successful. I think the more daring and the more addicted you were to extraordinary experiences, the more likely you were to find new hunting grounds, the more likely you were to conquer neighboring tribes, the more likely you were to survive an attack. I think human beings like extraordinary experiences. We like comfort, but not as much as we like extraordinary experiences.
But having some of these animals is like chick bait. It's like a little pooch gets you a lot of cooch, like a guy that's walking a dog. Joe had tigers to get boys.
Which is so wild that he got straight guys. I mean, that guy had some fucking game.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess I see your point.
Come on, if you have a chimp, a baby chimp, you're walking around Austin, Texas.
Sure.
People come up to you and go, "Oh, Joe, I love your little chimp."
That's interesting.
I want to go out with you.
What a weird way to try to attract people. Well, they always say that about puppies. Like,
that's why
guys bring a puppy to the
my
park.
I mean, I'm more interested in Carl now,
Yeah, what's
Carl's a
your
little
motivation
psychopath. I love
over there
Carl.
with that baby dog?
Well, isn't it interesting when you see Carl interact with Marshall? Because Marshall's like, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want nothing to do with this. Stop biting me. What are you doing?
Yeah,
Like,
you can see it.
yeah. But you got two different kinds of things, you know? Like one of them is like a little bulldog, it's a little psychopath. And the other one is a golden retriever, is like a love sponge. Like all he wants to do is be your friend.
Yeah.
He wants to be your friend and unless you're a squirrel. And that's really interesting. You watch his reaction to squirrels, like his intensity when it comes to like squirrels and birds. He's
It's
so
the movement, right? It's the movement? Is that what's
it's
attractive?
just instincts. It
Yeah.
just fires up that part in their DNA that knows that that's what they do.
Uh-huh.
But the bizarre thing with retrievers is it's not to eat it; it's to bring it to you. It's always to bring it to you. Like one time, I got home and I let the dog out. I opened up the back door and I just had to take a leak. So I took a leak, and then as I flushed, washed my hands, opened the door, he's standing there with a squirrel in his mouth. Like he got a squirrel that quick.
Wow.
And he
So
wanted
happy
me
to
to know.
show you,
He was so
yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, what did you do? And he was like, ooh, what did I do? I'm like, what did you do, man? And so I got rid of the squirrel, but whenever he sees one, it's just nobody had to teach him that. He's locked in. Like that's what he wants to do. He wants to go get squirrels, and he wants to bring them back to you. It's a weird thing because it's like you understand predatory instincts. Like cats have them. They're the worst. They have killed so many fucking birds. It's something like it's multiple billions of mammals and birds are killed every year by outside cats.
The first thing that kills, songbirds, birds is glass windows, skyscrapers and glass windows. Second is domestic cats, and they are killing machines, and they really do take a toll on wild birds.
I
in a
went because
terrible
I'm
way.
getting ready for this podcast. I went down a dirty road last night, a wormhole of cats. Predatory cats, and there's compilations of cats just jacking pigeons, jacking squirrels, jacking everything they can get their hands on.
Yeah. Now, cats are bad unless they're indoors, domestic cats. They've, in Hawaii, cats are the reason why so many species in Hawaii went extinct.
Yep.
They're
in Australia.
Australia.
They brought them in Australia to deal with certain animals, and then they got out of control, and now in Australia they hunt them.
Dodo birds went extinct because of domestic cats that were introduced into Mauritius and 200, 300 years ago, whenever dodo birds went extinct. But no, they're killing machines.
They're machines.
Sorry to interrupt you. On that.
No worries. But their predatory instincts are more reasonable. Like I understand that they're cats and that's what cats do, but the weird thing about a retriever is he's not doing it to eat it.
Yeah.
He's doing it to bring it to me.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even have to teach him to bring a ball back. Like he learned within like the first 2 or 3 throws. If I throw the ball, he brings it back to me. It's just it's brought into them. Whereas every other dog that I've had, I had to teach him. You throw the ball, you're like, come on, bring it back. Come on, bring it back. And you bring it back, give him a treat, then they understand. You praise them. And then eventually they understand commands, and they have this like pathway that you've carved into their system of chasing the ball, bringing it back. We're gonna have fun. Chase the ball, bring it back. Marshall, it was in there. It was already in there.
But that's his programming, right? I mean,
which is crazy.
Which is so much of what what we found so interesting about the justification for this love that a lot of the subjects we've covered had for these chimpanzees was that they love me. They do these things with me. I've trained them to believe that they have feelings for me and I have feelings for them. We have this understanding, and I feel what we've realized is this kind of imbalance of this mutuality of caregiving that I think exists with a lot of our subjects that we cover, but also some of the chimpanzees. It's very, very incredibly selfish around the symmetry of needs.
But it's so disturbing. You have a beautiful lab, a dog, that Tanya says, constantly how much she loves this chimp Tonka. But the chimp is like incarcerated in this cage. It's like, Tanya, if you really love this chimp and Tonka loves you back, why the cage?
Right.
You don't have a cage for your dog.
Right.
And it just seems so obvious. Like, Tanya, this chimp does not love you the way you love it.
Well, I think it does, but it also doesn't have a choice. Right? So if Tanya lived in the jungle, if she had a shack in the jungle and the chimp lived in the jungle wild and free, how much would the chimp visit her? First of all, it wouldn't be eating chicken nuggets and drinking Coca-Cola, which is weird too. That she's feeding this thing, and she said it has congestive heart failure. Spoiler alert again. It's still good. You still got to watch it, folks. But if you give a person that, they fucking get sick. Like, nothing you're doing to that chimp is natural. The cage is not natural. The food's not natural. Nothing's natural. You know, one of the saddest things for me was when she was showing it Instagram reels and just scrolling through reels, and the chimp's just staring at the screen.
That
was the weirdest one.
That's really disturbing.
But meanwhile, I do that.
I know that, but that's a lot of the sentiment we see from people is the reaction to that. We are basically doing that ourselves.
Oh yeah, we're doing it to ourselves.
You're not
But
looking at your son.
You can make a choice.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to put this down. And I'm going to go out in the real world and have fun with human beings and have a good time with my friends. You can make those choices. The chimp doesn't have a choice. It's essentially a prisoner for no reason, and it likes the guard.
And that chimp, Tonka was looking at its kids in that footage, and whether Tonka knew it or not, but
and Instagram was looking at a bunch of things, but just staring at the screens. But I don't think it probably understood that those were his kids, but it probably did remember what it was like to have babies, and
to be outside, sitting there in that cage in the basement, looking at these chimps washing a Mercedes that's outside. We both still talk to Tanya almost daily, or communicate with Tanya.
Oh my God!
And it's the most bizarre communication because we don't. Everyone thinks I lied to Tanya about this film. She would have talked to me anyway. I'm convinced of that. And when I did come into the picture, she didn't skip a beat, and she was like, "Oh, it's you. Let's keep filming for another year and a half." But she continues to talk with us, and we continue to tell her, Tanya, maybe this is an opportunity for you to rethink and reinvent yourself. It's really interesting.
Well, it doesn't seem like she has a lot of self-reflection, with all due respect.
I know.
Which,
it's hard not to be compassionate with a lot of these people, to be honest.
Right.
It's really hard because
they're humans.
They're humans.
Well, especially Tanya, because she led us into her life in such an intimate way that it was. She was really generous that way. So it isn't black and white. There's a lot of gray.
Right. I understand an audience reaction, though, and you can have those kind of conflicting views on it. But being part of making it is, we're partially complicit to it too, as well. I mean, in a way of sharing that story in a way.
Well, there's the age-old term: with great power comes great responsibility. It is a great responsibility to hold a large chimpanzee in your house. That is a great power. It is an enormous responsibility. And she should not have the option to have that responsibility.
Yeah.
She's not capable of managing that situation. I don't think anybody's capable of it. I think the same way, I just think dolphins, we're lucky that they're nice. That's what I think. We're lucky that they're nice because they should be killing us every chance they can too.
Yeah.
They are. They're not just that, but infanticide. The reason why female dolphins are so promiscuous.
No.
Well, male dolphins, when they find a female, if the female has babies, she will not breed for I think it's a long period of time. I think it's around 6 years.
Oh wow.
See if that's true.
Wow.
But so what a male will do will kill the babies. The males will kill the babies to force her into estrus, so she will start breeding again. So what the females do to counteract that is to have sex with as many male dolphins as they can. So they have sex with all the male dolphins. They're not monogamous in any way, stretch, or form. They just go and fuck as many guys as they can. So those guys will protect their babies because they don't know if that's their baby or not because they know they've had sex with her. But if they have not had sex with her and then she has babies, they will kill that baby.
Are any animals monogamous? Because they used to think so.
Penguins. Penguins are, but they only do it for like a year. They're monogamous for like a year. But they also look exactly the same, which is a trap.
They used to think macaw parrots were monogamous and swans, and then they started doing the genetics, and they realized they cheat like hell.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. It doesn't seem to serve any purpose evolutionarily for them to be monogamous. It seems contrary to the idea of natural selection. Like you should be wanting to, if you have potent genes, you should want to spread those genes as much as possible.
So that means we shouldn't be monogamous.
Well, human beings, we've fallen into this weird thing where we're more than an animal in that we are an animal, but we're an animal that expresses our thoughts and feelings to each other, and we are evolving. We are clearly different in that we are animals, but we can manipulate our environment like no animal that's ever existed. We can travel to any place in the world, which no animal could ever do on its own. We can do all kinds of things that other animals can't do, but more importantly, we communicate.
Yeah.
And we communicate.
Tell stories.
Yes, and we empathize with each other. And we recognize things in other people, even heinous people, even people that you don't like whether it's Joe Exotic or Tanya. You recognize, like, I see. She's not. I get it. You know.
Yeah.
She's just a person who's all fucked up. Even that crazy drunk lady who had the one that attacked her daughter. Like, what happened to her? You know, like, what was her childhood like? You know, it couldn't have been good.
And she's the one person out there who's still alive who I really don't want to hear from.
Yeah.
Because I really wonder right now, what is she thinking?
Well, the calmness while her daughter was being attacked on the phone, the calmness of that phone call was just shocking.
Suspicious.
I think, you know, when that lady from the liquor store was talking about how much that lady drinks, like, who knows what she's even responsible for anymore. Like, she's got to be out of her fucking mind all the time if she's drinking that much booze.
But I think she wanted out with the chimp. I think she was as caged, as depressed as the chimp, possibly in that house after 15 years living with this chimp that she thought, you know, was her son, and then later was dressing, you know, the chimp up with the same clothing as her deceased husband. I think she wanted out, and somehow she figured it out.
Well, the life choice is really remarkable. They're also basically in cages. The humans taking care of the chimpanzee.
Right.
You really think about it, and the same goes for Sandy Harold. You know, what was so great about revisiting that story in Connecticut. You know, we basically. We were set to come out with this show in March this year, and we were basically wrapped in November, and we were going through finishing, and we suddenly got access to the entire Travis story. We worked with this guy who wrote this incredible article, a New York Magazine article named Dan Lee. It's one of the best written articles about Travis. It's called Travis the Menace. He has no attribution of sources. You don't know who is talking. So it's the kind of foundational piece for the Travis story. We tracked him down. He says, I have everyone that was part of that story, and they have archive. Do you want to do it? And so we basically said, you know, is this going to make our story better? Meaning that we're going to have to extend for at least 4 or 5 months to do this right and postpone our entire delivery schedule. And once we got into it, it was so worth it because we got this total intimate view of what it was like to be in Sandy's world. We had this archive. The video that you see has never been seen before. This portrait of a family, this kind of very complicated, complex family life that's been inhabited by Travis, which was a descendant of Connie Casey's place in Missouri. If you think about that, where our starting point was for this whole project was always around how do we understand where captive primates came from in America. Connie Casey was this place, this kind of, you know, breeding ground for all of these animals that were kind of cycled through Hollywood. And what I found very interesting is this lineage that led to Travis. Travis was sold to Sandy, and then you see
it's so incestuous.
It's so incestuous that they're all connected. And you'll see a little bit of episode 4. There it is.
Travis the Menace.
And it's a remarkable story. This is Sandy who bought Travis from Connie. Connie, you know, Susie was
By the
the
way,
mother. Yeah.
how much does that photograph freak you out?
Yeah.
When you see that chimp holding that baby at any minute and just decide to pull that baby's head off.
And when chimps smile, it's actually a sign of aggression. It's not like us. We you know, smile because we're happy. That's not a happy chimp doing that.
So he's
trained.
really?
He's trained
Yeah,
to.
he's
He's trained
to-
but he's
more-
trained to smile. He's not necessarily aggressive here.
Yeah.
He's trained to show his teeth because
Yeah.
it's cute.
Right.
It's
right.
more of a grimace. It's more of a happy
Right.
smile, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Right.
So it was fascinating to us to get access to this story. We go into it, and
He's drinking soda from McDonald's.
That's disturbing.
yeah, he got too big.
Well, you're giving him the standard American diet.
But look
Yeah.
at the canines compared to ours. Look how they're daggers. You
Oh,
know?
well, the bite force, everything. I mean, everything about them.
Yeah.
We are so watered down by the evolutionary process. And I was real aware of that when I was touching that 2-year-old chimp with diapers. Like, real aware.
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
It's a different thing. And when you're taking this thing and it's a time bomb. You have like 4 years where you can control it, maybe 5, right? And then they say after 5, it's just like you're basically rolling the dice anytime someone comes over your house.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's basically it.
Just so crazy.
But he was, this classic story. It was this kind of gothic fairy tale in Stamford, Connecticut, which was so unusual because it's a suburb of Manhattan. Everyone thought this was in the South or wherever. It was happening in Stamford, Connecticut. And Sandy had this kind of void in her life. She buys Travis and raises her part of the family. And you see the story, the same arc as every other chimp story in a family setting. They get too mature and they have to, the thing that I thought you'd appreciate in terms of our kind of this idea that we show in the story really well, I think, is this chimp is happy and connected to the community because he's free. He's socializing. He's a town celebrity.
Right,
he's at work with Sandy
Right.
in the tow shop. Answering phones.
Yeah.
Filling out paperwork.
The mascot of the tow shop, Desire Me Motors.
Right.
Yeah, he's airbrushed everywhere on trucks.
And he lives a cool life.
He lives a cool life.
And then one day,
everyone gets to see the chimp, right? And then until one day he gets too aggressive, and this incredible story, which we don't cover in the doc, but he's in this intersection, very busy intersection in Connecticut. A little boy throws a can of Coke over to the car with the chimp. The chimp gets out, stops traffic, and it's covered in the news and it's a joke. Everyone's like, oh my God, it's Planet of the Apes.
The chimp
again.
is trying to get a hold of the kid.
Tim's trying to, he's irritated. Why would you bother the chimpanzee? He threw a can of Coke at him. He runs out of the car trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, Sandy gets an ice cream cone, brings it back in the car, and everything's cool.
2 hours later.
2 hours later, right? So the state of Connecticut says, no way, you can't have this chimp anymore out in public. You got to put him in home. So this chimp is out in space for the majority of his life, and then built to confinement for the majority of his life. And so fast forward, and I'll spare you kind of the other stuff that we learned, but what everyone kind of talks about in revisiting media of the time is it was annexed. It was the wine glasses. He was drunk. It was
Maybe a
Elmo.
relationship.
Maybe the relationship went wrong. But he grabbed car keys. He wanted to go for a ride. He could drive a car. He wanted to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Right.
And the person who he runs into first, Charla, represents confinement.
Right.
He was a nanny.
Right.
So what do you think's going to happen?
Right.
It was also reported he was fucking, or he left already. He was cruising around and he was in the graveyard fucking with the guy who was digging graves. That's what we heard. That's what we heard.
Probably
Yeah.
insanely bored, just like a person that's stuck in a cage.
Yeah. And chimps, when they're bored, and you always see it, they rock. And so you see, if you're watching that section of Chimp Crazy, Travis is just sitting there rocking, which is like a tick,
Right.
Big cats do a figure 8 over and over and over. Chimps do this rocking. And when you see that, that's a really desperately depressed chimp.
But we love this. I'm sorry, but we're interested in this tension because we think we can control things. I mean, that's
Right.
what, if you've seen the movie Nope, this great footage with this chimp Gordy, which he covers and is a through line in the show. It's inspired based on this whole idea of spectacle and humans that can control things. Nope is in that scene with Gordy the chimp is probably one of the most beautiful displays cinematically that I've seen.
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's very tragic, but
The one person that has the 15-year-old chimp in their house, how have they been able to avoid all that?
she's careful. I mean, she's 77 years old, Pam Rosaire.
Oh, boy.
When she was 7 years old, she was asked what she wants to do with her life in this circus animal family, and she says, "I want to train chimps. I want to do something hard. I want to do something difficult." The rest of her family trained horses and elephants, and that was culturally.
But
what
that's
they
a
were
really
part of.
good question. How is it that Pam
But
hasn't?
okay, you're thinking about more different measures, but
I'm thinking about attacks.
Yeah,
How-
that's what I'm thinking. It's a really good question because I always wondered that about Pam Rosaire. How come she's the one person that has sort of been immune to it, or has she?
I think she's got some, look, I think she's lucky. I think it's the best way. I don't know what happens behind the scenes, to be honest. I think, to be fair, I don't know. But I do know that when I watched her interaction, there's a real, understanding. And it's she has a leash on him. I mean, it's
And she also, they are neutered. These chimps.
Castrated,
they're
yeah.
castrated.
I'm sure they're
And
less aggressive.
They do, they remove their canines oftentimes. They do have to alter them to be able to continue to work with them. Yeah.
They're modified.
I mean,
yeah.
I should say there's a lot of dark parts of our story that we didn't go into. Like one of the things we learned was that so many of the monkeys that are being sold, by Tanya and others, are coming across the border from Mexico, just along with probably drugs. And more recently, in recent time, we've seen a lot of Central American and Mexican species coming into the U.S. So there's a pipeline. I'm sort of segueing.
Well, yes, it is. We didn't realize also how dark this was coming out of it because we were so close to it, and the reaction by people, it's very heavy. We're all desensitized from seeing this. There's some really interesting stuff that happens in Fort Joe. I hope you finish it, including another attack, but this time with a person that we all know. And
you're teasing me.
I'm teasing you a little bit. I'm sorry.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
It's
Jeff.
pretty
I'll
good.
probably want to watch it.
Okay,
It's
good.
pretty good.
It's
a
heavy.
part of her body gets bitten off.
Oh, come on, man.
I'm not kidding.
Similar to Trump.
Now you're giving away way too much. You fucked it up. Fucked up the whole show. I'm going to look at her ear the whole show now. So is that lady with the 15-year-old chimp, is that the only one that you know of that keeps a full-grown adult and has it just wander around with everybody?
We've learned of more.
It's also castrated,
to be
too.
clear, Pam doesn't live in the chimp doesn't live in her house. Like
it's in there sometimes.
Yeah,
there's sometimes, but it's
and
not,
how much of the castrating it changes its behavior?
I think significantly, because Buck in Oregon was castrated. And then
the Connecticut chimpanzee, was that castrated?
Probably, but Buck was castrated and started wearing a shock collar.
Right.
In order to manage a chimp, as you say, after 4 or 5 years old, they typically alter them, remove their canines, castrate them, shock collars.
It's so crazy. Like fixing a dog is so commonplace. People don't even think twice. Oh, is your dog neutered? Oh, you're a good pet owner. That way your dog's not going to have unwanted puppies.
Yeah.
But fixing a chimpanzee, like, what are you doing? Like, what did you do to him?
It's like fixing
but also, by the way,
fixing
think
a human.
Think about what the medical care they get. The guy who's a horse vet is the guy working at a chimpanzee.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, yeah.
So if you think about the care, it's really horrible. But I was going to add to what you were saying, Eric. One thing that we learned through the process about kind of what is this about, mainly, we're talking about this very niche subject matter of captive chimpanzees in America, which we learned there really only is about 1,300 remaining in captivity, which includes those who are already in sanctuaries in the U.S. About half of that 1,300.
And big zoos.
And big zoos. Big zoos have about 250 of them still. So in terms of the kind of roadside zoo, private home environment, it's between less than 100 chimpanzees that remain in captivity. So to answer your question, there might be more, but it's hard to hide a chimp.
But globally, there's still many chimps in Thailand and all over the world that are, so in the U.S. at least there's less and less in this.
There's less and less. The primates in general, in terms of monkeys as pets, it's reported somewhere around 15,000 people in America have primates as chimpanzees as pets. 15,000. 15,000 according to the American Animal Welfare Institute. So that's what we're finding. But through that, we had to zoom out, and I think what we've learned, what I've learned personally about organizations that are doing something to protect wild lands and protect wild populations of chimpanzees. There's a lot of great ones out there. So we've been supporting a program that's doing 12 project sites in Africa, $10 million, 10,000 chimpanzees. And that's what we're hopeful for. I mean, Africa is basically going to be China one day.
What do you do, though, with animals that have been kept in captivity their whole life? You can't really introduce them to the wild, can you?
It depends on the species.
Certainly not. I mean, chimpanzees. Certainly not after they're castrated.
Not chimpanzees.
They've done all these projects. Look at
chimpanzees,
Project
definitely
NEM.
not.
I don't know if you like any of these other movies that were done about these scientific experiments people have in their homes in the 70s and 80s, bringing chimps and reintroducing them into the wild. It doesn't work. It ends horribly.
Well, there's a place in Africa. There's a sort of an island in it's like a freshwater river where they have released chimps, but chimps that are just placed in Africa. But yeah, to release them actually back into a population of wild chimps hasn't been done successfully, for sure. Not with chimps.
Have they done it with cats?
That's a good. There's that famous image of Putin releasing a tiger in Russia that was captive. They have done it with cats, actually. I work with an organization that's been releasing jaguars back into northern Argentina, where jaguars have now disappeared. But the jaguar program it's very. They do it very carefully, and they put the jaguar in this enormous enclosures and let them capture wild prey before they release them. It takes a lot of time.
Well, I mean, we were talking about house cats earlier.
Oh, house cats.
No. Well, I wasn't saying house cats. I just meant cats in general. But I was saying that house cats, which are like completely domesticated, you can come to them, pet them. If you let them loose, they survive fine.
Yeah.
It's feral cats.
Yeah.
They all have instincts to kill and eat things.
Yeah.
So I would imagine cats would probably be one of the easiest ones to reintroduce to the wild. But then you have things that are accustomed, like bears. One of the problems with people that live in rural communities is when bears start attacking your dumpsters and your garbage cans, they know food is there and you can't get rid of them. They will come back to that no matter what. You can't scare them off. You scare them off, you're only scaring them for an hour. They'll be back.
Yeah.
They know there's food there.
Where we live in California, we have bears, black bears, not grizzly bears, and we have mountain lions. And almost every night you'll see on our streets, when there's a certain night of the week when the garbage comes out, all the garbage cans are tipped over because of the bears. And you're right. They once they learn that, then they have a pattern, and they go after those dumpsters.
Well, California used to have big brown bears.
California's state flag is a grizzly bear,
which is crazy.
And we work with an organization that's trying to bring them back to California.
Settle down, folks. Settle down. Let's keep them alive where they are.
Yeah.
Don't get nutty.
But
All these
think-
people that want to reintroduce animals, like, okay, it's just you have to understand you're playing God. You're throwing.
And there's a reason it went extinct, because the last grizzly bear in California was shot about 100 years ago, and it's because they eat people.
Leveque, California is named after the last guy who died from a grizzly bear attack. Yeah, I think his name's Stephen Leveque. And he got fucked up. They were big, big brown bears, and we killed them all because they were killing people. And I'm not saying you should kill them all. I'm not saying what we did was good. But once you've established an ecosystem that if you make I believe I like humans more than I like other animals. This is my thought. I believe that we're more important to each other than animals are to us. Doesn't mean that I don't care about animals. But if you start bringing in things that are going to eat people, I'm like, hey, this is not good for us. It's not good for us. We don't have to reintroduce them to places. I think a better solution would be, let's make sure that wherever they live, naturally, their populations are fine. I think that's probably the better solution. There's been some success of reintroducing wolves into Montana, the Yellowstone reintroduction
we know
in the
those
1990s.
guys.
Really interesting. Like they did have an overpopulation problem of ungulates because bears can only eat so many of them, and wolves are much more clever and they act together. And it's kind of balanced things out for now.
We work with Turner Endangered Species, Ted Turner, and we work very closely with this guy, Mike Phillips, in Montana, who's been probably the key guy to bring back gray wolves into this part of the western part of the United States. But yeah, it's been without. I mean, I know because we do this that even gray wolves, there's a lot of controversy from ranchers. Imagine bringing back big grizzlies, brown bears to California.
Yeah, it's going to be a problem. But people that live in urban areas don't understand what that problem is. Like, this is the problem that Vancouver has. So British Columbia outlawed brown bear hunting. You can hunt black bears because people eat black bears, and you can eat brown bears as well, but most people don't. And they have in their mind hunting grizzly bears is in line with what they want to call trophy hunting, which is gross. You're just killing an animal so you can stuff it. It's gross. We all agree it's gross. But the reality of grizzly bears in rural areas, I have a good friend who lives in northern BC. He lives in like a very rural area. He's like, they're fucking dangerous. He had to shoot one that was trying to break into his cabin from 3 feet away. Yeah. He shot a large grizzly bear trying to get into his cabin and eat him from 3 feet away. Yeah. He said they're really bold now because they haven't hunted them for a few years. So if you're running into a 4 or 5 year old male, They don't know what it's like to be hunted. No one has any feelings of being nervous around human beings.
And you remember the movie The Grizzly Man, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
that didn't-
Timothy Treadwell.
That's a fascinating.
He
movie.
was lunch.
That's my favorite unintentional comedy.
Yeah.
because it's Werner Herzog. I think made that movie funny on purpose.
Of course, that's like our
It's
source
a
of
really good.
inspiration.
It's a good movie. But I
a great
would
movie.
never
Yeah.
forget watching it in New York City. I was watching it at a theater. The whole time I was just saying, like, oh my God. Like I was angry with this guy.
Right.
You know, he was
Yeah.
like worried about his bandana or his,
Yeah.
his whatever he was worried about. I was so pissed watching it, but it was a good movie.
But it's the same thing. It's a less than extraordinary person who gets attached and addicted to extraordinary experiences.
Yeah.
You're constantly around these. I mean, he got some incredible footage.
Yeah.
That guy got some amazing footage. And he did some fucking hard camping. Okay, that guy was out there roughing it for a long-ass time in a tent, surrounded by monsters, living in the grizzly maze. He's a maniac.
Yeah, talking baby
Yeah.
talk to the bears.
He pulled it off for a long time. But you knew what was going to happen. If you watch that, like eventually something's going to decide to eat him.
Right.
And then that's exactly what happened.
It's like these chimps with these women.
Similar, but at least that guy's going to where they live.
Yeah, of course.
I don't have any problem with someone deciding to do that. If you're that fucking crazy and you want to throw yourself into the system and maybe live with them for as long as it lasts, I mean, and maybe it also was suicide by bear, right? Because that guy seemed really depressed and didn't seem like he was having a good time.
Yeah, but he had the bear eat his girlfriend too. That was
Well,
like
the
him
bear
getting
ate his
eating.
girlfriend after it ate him.
Right.
It killed him. She was trying to defend him. She was hitting it with a frying pan, and
Yeah, but she was like, collateral damage. It was. I feel bad for the girlfriend.
I do too. But again, like, what kind of choices are we making in this life?
Yeah.
But think about you asked a question about reintroduction or these attacks that occur. There was a story we didn't include. It was just too tangential. But there was a neighbor of the Missouri Primate Foundation, the Chimp Party place, where all the animals were bred. At a time in the 90s, she had 42 chimps living in the house in a single property. One escapes. A 19-year-old boy recognizes his dog in the backyard is being attacked by a chimpanzee. He grabs a gun, shoots the chimpanzee. He gets charged with destruction of property. Gets a felony.
Oh my God.
He went to prison.
He went
Oh, my God.
For 6 months. Gets out. He missed the birth of his daughter,
That's insane.
and his name is Jason Coates. It's a really interesting story.
Who the fuck tried that?
And then guess what? Here's what happened. Two years ago, I think, he gets his record expunged finally at 40 years old. And now he can't get work. The guy's like a contractor, and he couldn't get work.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, that was
Defending
really-
his property. He shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place.
Also defending his life.
Yeah.
Like the reality of, if you understand chimpanzees, the person who had that chimpanzee is responsible. It's not this man who's defending his life.
Yeah.
You are so vulnerable to a chimpanzee. If they decide to get after you, there's not a lot you can do. You could survive for a little bit, but it's going to tear you apart. That's
Yeah.
just how it is. And if that guy is not armed and he can't protect himself, then what do you have? You have a person that gets torn apart by a chimpanzee. The idea that you can't protect yourself from someone's crazy fucking idea of harboring an animal, an enormous animal that's insanely strong and hyper aggressive and intelligent and uncontrollable.
Yeah, that was a tragic story.
Terrible.
It's really hard making these films because so many good stories fall on the cutting room floor and so many great subjects, and that was one of them.
Well, you have to
it's
have
like-
some discretion in the process of casting subjects. I mean, it's a choice, but I also think the idea is it was also kind of far away from where we were going with these
Right.
themes. I think,
Well, it seems like you could do multiple series.
oh my God, we could
Yeah.
continue with this thing. It's harder, and it's getting harder and harder to do.
But is it also harder to get people to be natural on camera
Sure.
and to not be performative?
It's harder. I mean, what is harder now, and it was hard in the very beginning also, is that these people that keep, I'm generalizing a little bit, but for the most part, they're very guarded about letting you in because, one, they don't know if you're a spy for animal rights groups. They don't know if you're the feds, and they don't know if you're going to steal their animals. And so a lot of these people have very valuable animals, and they're extremely guarded and paranoid about letting you in. Now, of course, it's even become harder because in our case, we've been sort of, become known And so to continue this model of doing another story on, I don't know, bears, yeah, people are going to be suspicious. But as far as being natural, I don't think that's so hard. With Tanya and Joe, Joe's obviously a performer in a sense, but we just film them. And the more intimate you can make that filming experience for them, the more natural they become. So we work with hardly anybody. With Tiger King, it was just me and a camera guy. And then, and I drove back and forth from Texas to Oklahoma constantly, Dallas to Oklahoma City. It was just two of us filming. And so the more intimate it is, the more, the less of an audience is watching while you're filming, the better it is.
And also, before Tiger King, there's no way they could have known how big that was going to be.
Oh, my God. I didn't know.
No, we didn't know.
No way they could have ever anticipated some bizarre, obscure documentary on people that are keeping pet cats.
Our insurers didn't even know.
But I started making a film about the sixth extinction.
Big cats in America. Yeah, okay, that's like low risk.
Oh my God.
We didn't even know it was going to be successful.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, like I said, you guys caught lightning in a bottle. It's the perfect timing of people being locked in during the pandemic. You guys were kind of the early stars of the pandemic. Your show. Yeah. It was also a welcome escape from the craziness that we were all experiencing. We're experiencing everyone's wearing a mask, you're keeping away from people, and then you're, at least when you're home with your family, like, oh my God, we're not these fucking idiots. We're crazy, but we're not this crazy. Like this world is so much more insane than this new insane world that it became sort of a little bit of a panacea for us.
Yeah, I think I was telling Eric this. It's so we get asked this question a lot about the state of non-scripted, unscripted shows, documentaries, and this dramatization that you're seeing as a trend. People making very cinematic, real stories, dramatic recreations, and Eric and I we're talking about it a lot because so much of our content is so much more surreal than anything we can even make up. Right. Or recreate. And that's what's so surreal about our process and also just the stuff we capture.
Right.
It's stranger than fiction.
It's stranger than fiction, and it also comes off as authentic. And as someone who's worked in reality TV, it's not reality, okay? And especially the kind of reality shows that you think of as reality shows, they have all these scenarios set up. They'll edit things to make them look like different things happened because they just want you to keep people tuned in for drama. So if you're following a family around, they create drama. They have scripted shit. And it feels like it, right? Yeah. The thing about Tiger King and the thing about Chimp Crazy is it feels very authentic. It's crazy.
God, I'm so glad you say that because I would fly into St. Louis, drive down to the Ozarks to film Tanya, and she'd be like 3 hours late for some reason, and then she'd show up and she'd say, oh, I got to go get my eyes done. And then I would be like, Tanya, you were 3 hours late. Can I at least film you with getting your eyes done? And not once were we setting her up or saying, can you, get your lip injections? She just would say, no, I got 4 o'clock appointment with my lip injection. And we just shadowed her. So it was just her life.
Yeah, so it is authentic. Yeah,
and we also have
100%.
Eric, we're also fortunate to have an incredibly talented team that can help create these experiences in a way on screen that make it authentic.
Well,
even
and it's
more
also
so.
the editing process. Must be
of
No,
course.
we had a great team.
Incredible group of team.
So as they're doing it, are they like marking down like key moments? Do they have someone who's like a stenographer or something who's like marking down so like what to look for? Or do you at the end of the day go, that thing where she went and got her lips done, we have to have that in?
I wish we had what you just said. It would be very helpful.
Well, it seems like
we don't.
You guys are doing well.
It's pretty organic. It's pretty organic. I think there's also, you follow the core story, which was Tanya's story. We kind of knew that we had it the minute the missing chimpanzee happened or the supposed death occurred. So that was the story. Where's the chimp? And through that story, we're able to kind of latch on all these other things. Now, what you don't know is we shot these other stories, out of sequence. The Travis came at the very end, so we had to figure out a way to, weave it into episode 2 and weave it into episode 4. We knew we really wanted that in to serve as thematic connection to Tanya's story.
But I just have to make one big overriding point, which is that this is not a good recipe for people.
Yeah, sure. No.
Making films like this. Because it's not. Because we, like there's all these sort of formulaic styles of documentaries, like a biopic, a famous person, or a takedown documentary, or true crime. What we do, and I think we've just been really lucky, is we just start filming somebody, never knowing, of course, where this is going to go, and that is not a good, smart way to make probably documentaries. Because what if it goes nowhere?
Right.
I'm just bringing that up because
Right.
And so in order to do Chimp Crazy after Tiger King, we actually filmed so many different things to get to chimp people.
How do we spend less time on these things? Is what we've kind of realized.
Exactly.
It's like exhausting. It's worth it though.
Well,
it's
it
worth
seems
it.
like there's no other way
There's
to
no
keep
other
it
way.
authentic than to just shadow these people forever and then splice it down to 4 hours.
Yeah.
Which is like, you have 250 plus hours of footage?
250 days of footage.
It's like about
okay.
it's about 1,300 hours roughly.
Okay, 1,300 hours down to 4.
Yeah.
Now
that's just primary camera. It's like summarizing the days. I mean,
Right.
multiple cameras, multiple
Right.
things happening in a day. Right.
Right.
We're very efficient. It's an 8 to 12 hour day. We're capturing a lot of stuff in that day.
So are you archiving and you like at the end of the day, so like what day this
Sure.
happened and what day that so you do make sure
There's
that
a process. There's a field process to ingest that has kind of the notes that we have for the day. What happened? What's interesting about the day?
And are you
gets in.
trying to form the narrative of how you're going to have the whole documentary series play out as you're doing that, or is it just
that comes so much later?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like we have no idea where it's going. Probably for the first year and a half of filming. In the case of Chimp Crazy, we didn't even discover Tanya until a year and a half in.
Year and a half in. It's what kind of
So,
made it. What made it more
You're
complicated.
like, we got our star.
Well, what's so interesting, Joe, and I want to come back to this about, I saw you get a little emotional with the Buck story because it was really a hard one for us to tell, but an important one to make sure we got that in. But we missed it. We missed the cover. We were going to go. Eric and I were going to go to Pendleton to cover what was happening with Buck because we knew there was a violation that occurred from the state of Oregon that basically said, Tamara, you have to do these improvements, otherwise we're taking the animal away from you. And that had happened. We thought we would cover the response to that. 4 days later, Buck was shot. And we said to ourselves, and I remember this so vividly, we have to trust our instincts. Like when we are into something, let's cover it, film it, send someone out and cover it if we need to. So we decided to film everything including our conversations and process, very meta, which ended up becoming part of the story too, as you'll see more in 4, where we have to turn her in basically. So the point with being is that the Buck story happened. We thought we'd just send this guy, Dwayne, who we recruited to kind of join the team into Festus to cover this confiscation, thinking nothing was going to happen. Day happens. Take the animals out, one is missing. And then the guy that we had sent there became friends with her, and we just had to keep following it. So this guy became essential to the story with no intended reasoning for that.
Yeah.
It's the making of became more interesting than the actual subject matter in a way to us, and kind of weaving that together came much later.
It's not a good formula if you want to make money with documentaries.
I'm interested though. You're also kind of an outsider in this. But what was your kind of response to the industry, formulaic kind of way of doing things?
Well, doing what kind of things?
With reality TV programming or programming in general?
Well, I think with reality TV, it was pretty simple. I could see how it started. It was people that were involved in scripted shows, and then scripted shows somewhere around the early 2000s got decimated by reality shows. Mm-hmm. And so these people who were already respected television producers, they made their way into reality television. And then they realized some of these people are pretty fucking boring most of the time. We don't have enough time to spend 250 days to film one episode of a show. right? Which is what you guys had to do. So instead, what they do is they say, okay, today you're going to argue about what to have for lunch. You know, and so Bob wants Mexican food, Sally wants Chinese food. You have to figure it out, and you have to go around town and figure out where to eat, and you're eventually going to decide this. And this is the place you're going to eat. You're going to be happy. And so the whole thing is the personal dynamics, the relationships these people have to each other, and then they create drama along the way. Along the way, you're going to run into your friend from high school who's like perfectly made up, you know, like well lit with a microphone on. Whoa! So it's like it's bullshit. It's bullshit. It's not really reality, but it's also not really a drama. It's real human beings that are doing nonsense, and you feel it.
Yeah.
And then there's also like reality shows that are on specific subjects, and those are bullshit too.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you have dating shows, which are super, super popular because, like, who is he going to pick? Who's she going to pick? How's this going to work?
Yeah.
You know, we get excited about that. Or fucking these garage shows where someone shows up at a storage unit. Well, you know, a lot of those shows, they fake it. They load up the storage unit. Because, so they can't be assured that this storage unit's going to have some fucking pirate's treasure in it, right? So what do? They put pirates.
You ruined that for me.
Yeah, so they pretend that they got this at an auction. Like, who knows what's in it? Apparently, the guy died in a mysterious way, and there's people looking for him. We might really be onto something. And then you cut to commercial. Is that gold? Cut to commercial. Cut back from commercial. Is that gold?
But I even thought, I don't watch any of those shows. I even thought some of these, like, you know, nature shows, like Steve Irwin, you know, and I know you know Forrest Gallant, but I always kind of wonder, like, is he walking through the jungle and there he suddenly finds the snake? It's got to be set up a lot of the time.
A lot of the time, I'm sure it is.
Or the crocodile.
Some of those shows, but a lot of the ones, like one of the more interesting things today is YouTube, right? Because YouTube, you have these small, independent people. Like there's this guy we had on called Python Cowboy. And this guy goes out into the Everglades every day and captures pythons.
Yeah.
And, you know, like there's videos of him. He got bit by one, like really fucked up. His arm's gushing blood. He's holding on. They're enormous.
Yeah.
There's more pythons in the Everglades than anywhere on Earth.
Burmese pythons.
Yeah, Burmese pythons that used to be people's pets or used to be a part of a reptile facility.
So we're doing our next doc series is about reptiles and the smuggling of reptiles. We have a whole section on that.
It's another thing I went down the rabbit hole last night. Nile crocodiles. I was going into Nile crocodiles in the Everglades.
I can tell you a lot about Nile crocodiles.
Tell me about Nile crocodiles in the Everglades, though, because what they were saying is they found a few, and the ones that they identified that they've captured that were definitely Nile crocodiles came from the same gene line. So they think they came from the same genetic source. But then there was another guy that I was watching this documentary last night, or this YouTube video rather last night, where he was saying that there's like huge crocodiles that take out cattle on the west side of Florida.
No.
Yeah, so he was sketching me out. He's like,
I mean,
18 foot crocs kill cows.
There's like 23 or 24 species of crocodilians in the world. You know, that includes caimans, crocodiles, alligators, gharials. And the only crocs that are really, really dangerous to man are saltwater crocodiles, Nile crocodiles, mugger crocodiles. But the crocs in Florida that are native, you know, American crocodiles, they are brackish water croc. They're not like Nile crocodiles that are in freshwater. So in Florida, you basically just have American alligators. And there's a very small population of American crocodiles that are still native, but they're in sort of the estuaries and brackish water.
They're smaller.
Which ones are smaller?
American crocodiles.
Well, they're bigger than alligators.
Are they really?
Yeah, for sure.
What's the biggest American crocodile they've ever found?
Oh, they can be big. I've seen American crocodiles because the American crocodile, the one we have in South Florida, is the same croc that you see in coastal Mexico, goes down into Costa Rica. You can see, I've looked over, you know, I've seen a lot of American crocodiles in Mexico, Costa Rica. They're big. They're long. Longer than your alligator out there.
Really?
Not that much longer, but longer.
Jamie, can you find out what's the largest American alligator or American crocodile? I was under the impression that they were smaller species than the alligators were, and definitely smaller than the rest of the crocodiles.
Check me on that.
That's an alligator.
No, that's alligator. That's alligator.
A monster cattle-eating alligator shot in Florida. Look at the size of that thing.
Okay, but that's unusual.
15 feet. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Look at the size of that sucker.
But you said earlier crocodile.
Right, American crocodile.
Yeah,
What's the largest American crocodile, Jamie?
And the
found.
largest American alligator, right?
I think the largest American alligator was 20 feet long.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I
that
think
big?
that's the longest one they've ever found.
Wow.
I love this fact check for you.
Okay, here we go.
It's
14
fantastic.
foot. Yeah, so they're smaller.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, what's the largest American alligator then?
It's bigger, definitely, for sure.
Is it really?
Yeah, because
Wow.
that one that we have out there is 14 feet long.
Damn. It's like when you catch a fish, right? You say it's this big. I think that's how I'm being with
Yeah,
it.
okay, 19 feet 2 inches.
Oh, Joe, you're right.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm wrong.
Oh, I love this.
Well, so there's a bunch of different ones, right? And the Nile crocodiles are a different animal. Like Nile crocodiles regularly get to 18 feet, and there's
Yeah.
some really interesting reports from back in the day of much larger ones. And so the question is like, what? Here's the thing about alligators and crocodiles in particular: they don't die of old age. They just keep getting older and bigger. And when you introduce human beings and guns into the equation, what are the people going to shoot? Well, they're going to shoot the biggest ones, right? So you have guns being introduced in the 1800s, and now in 2024, you can't find the really big ones. Well, one of the reasons for that is a really big one would take hundreds of years to get that big. So an alligator like that big fucker that they had, that the cattle-eating 15-foot alligator, that guy might be 90 years old. You know,
Yeah.
so a crocodile that gets to 30 feet long,
Right.
which is, you know, there was reports of ones that were longer than a 38-foot boat that these guys were on. This is a long time ago, though. And so there's all this speculation. Were these people just freaking out because it was big and they exaggerated? Is this hyperbole? Like, what is this? Well, there's the other part of the speculation is, well, for sure we know crocodiles used to be bigger. There was many, many species of crocodiles that were fucking enormous. Dinosaur-eating crocodiles, huge thing. What is the biggest ancient crocodile that was ever discovered fossilized? I think it's like in the neighborhood of 50-plus feet long.
I like this right now, what we're doing. And I like that you were right and I was wrong.
I like that too. You should tell them about Gigantico.
Well, so my point is that, like, these things they're so different than us that it's hard for us to even imagine. Okay, the biggest freshwater croc ever was 40 feet long,
Yeah, it's remarkable.
110 million years ago. What about saltwater?
Wow.
Is that the largest crocodile period, or is it what the big ones freshwater?
Right.
Is that the biggest crocodile fossil ever found? Okay, largest sea-dwelling one, 30 feet long. Interesting. So the 40-foot long one was bigger. Interesting. So these ones that super croc, massive fossilized croc discovered in the Aguila, how do you say that? Aguila Formation in Big Bend National Park, 40 to 50 feet long, jaws with 6-inch teeth. Good Lord.
Wow.
Good Lord.
Big Bend.
Good Lord. 6-inch teeth. How great. Just imagine fucking 6-inch
County.
teeth and it's 40 feet long. Oh, my God.
I mean, I think saltwater crocs and Nile crocs might eat more people, right?
Yes.
Today.
Well, I have
that's
a friend,
insane.
Jim Shockey, who's actually a professional hunter that was hired to go to Africa to shoot some of these man-eating crocodiles that were taking out these people in this village. And the footage that he got of it is so disturbing because everyone in the village is missing something. Everyone in the village is either missing an arm or missing a leg or has a bite taken out of them. And while he was there, a woman got snatched up when she was trying to do laundry. So it's a very poor village, and these people are at the mercy of these monsters that are actively hunting them. So what they do is so if they want to do something like have a place where they can retrieve water safely, what they do is they put like giant poles in the ground all around. So they essentially like encase this area.
Right.
But the
That's
problem
so
is
primitive.
crocodiles have figured it out.
Yeah.
And then they go in there and they just settle in and they just wait for you. Because they can walk around on land, obviously. So they go out of the water, and then they go, oh, the fuckers, they only go in this little area. How do I get in that area? And they're watching you underwater for hours without breathing. You know,
I work a lot in Madagascar, and we have Nile crocodiles in Madagascar, but they're not as big as mainland Nile crocs. But I know that in Madagascar, it's when people go to wash their clothing around the edge of these lakes that they get, you know, and
that's their instincts, because that's how they get deer, like these little antelope species.
every year people die washing their clothing in Madagascar from Nile crocs.
Yeah.
But
Fuck. that.
Yeah.
So the speculation is that there's breeding populations of those Nile crocs in the Everglades.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
They've
Why not?
seen
Why
enough
not?
of them. See if you can find like what's the latest.
But
Breeding Nile crocodiles in the Everglades. They have a shoot-on-sight order for them.
I mean, it makes sense. I always wondered why there were not anacondas. And in the making of this reptile documentary we're doing, the reason we've been told that there are not anacondas in the Everglades is that they didn't import anacondas in the way they did Burmese pythons. Burmese pythons, from what we understand, the python skin people in Thailand and Malaysia, they would collect the eggs and breed, have the babies and send thousands of baby Burmese pythons to the U.S. And that never happened with anacondas. But you think about anacondas because they would live in the Everglades.
You're meeting the guy responsible for that tomorrow.
It's unclear if Nile crocodiles are breeding.
You are.
Unclear
You
if they are breeding in the wild in Florida. But here's some information about Nile crocodiles and breeding in Florida. First observed in Florida in the 60s.
Wow.
Wow. Believes they have captured all the Nile crocodiles in the area. Nile crocodiles become established in Florida. They could threaten native species. Well, that's what pythons have done.
Yeah.
I mean, they might have to bring in the Nile crocs to kill the pythons.
But what's interesting about that, in the 60s, alligators were
They have people
endangered.
for that
yes. Well, I lived in Florida in the 70s. And when
And
I lived in Florida, they were endangered.
They were on the endangered species
And
list.
People used to feed them marshmallows.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I lived in Gainesville, Florida. We used to go, and then when I was there, some lady got her dog snatched, and then everybody got kind of freaked out. Everybody in the town was like, whoa. Because they got way too comfortable with alligators. Because alligators, when they get used to people, they just lay around. So they would just sit on the banks, and we would go to the fucking park, like Lake Alice is where the lake is. We'd go to the park and hang out, and alligators would just be hanging out there. And I was a little kid. It was normal. It was normal to see alligators just sunning themselves, and they were endangered back then.
Yeah.
And now they're not endangered at all. Now they're everywhere.
And crocodile farming had a lot to do with why they're not endangered.
Really?
From what I understand. Yeah, because what took pressure off of crocs just globally, and not so much alligators, but crocs in general, was when the farming happened, it took pressure off of hunting them, obviously, for skins, right?
Right.
And the farming of crocodiles has been a really, it's controversial, but it's really been a success story for wild crocodilians.
But why is that? How does it affect alligators?
Well, that's a good question. I think it was crocodile farming. You should ask. But I know croc farming in general has protected crocodilians across the board. I guess they used to hunt alligators also for skins, or am I wrong?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They still do.
Okay, so maybe
they still breed them for skins and hunt them for skins, but now they have an overpopulation problem. So I was just curious to, how would crocodile farming make that happen? I don't think that. I think it's probably just a natural reaction to the fact they weren't hunted anymore, and then they just blossomed, and it just took a few decades, and then you have enormous populations of them.
Yeah, that may be true. I know croc farming has helped crocodilians across the board.
Sure.
That's for sure.
Well, and storms patterns, right? Shifting, isn't that also true?
American alligators were on the endangered species list. They
Yeah.
were
Spread has
very,
through.
very rare in the 60s. Now they're incredibly common.
Well, they were very rare because they were overhunted.
They were overhunted. Exactly.
I mean, that's the problem when we were talking about deer. One of the things that was established through Teddy Roosevelt, and when they set up the national parks and wildlife services in this country,
Right.
they had market hunting before that, and they had wiped out everything. There used to be elk over 50 states. They used to be everywhere.
Well, the eastern elk is extinct.
Yes, exactly. And we have Rocky Mountain elk now that have been transplanted into the east. But the market hunting was a real problem. We had decimated the populations of all these things. They were just hunting deer and all these different animals and selling them for food. And oftentimes it's like bison. They would just sell their tongues, which is really crazy because bison meat is thought to be like some of the best meat, but they were pickling their tongues and sending them back east.
Wow.
You're now making me think about something, and I don't know the facts but the Migratory Bird Act is that we used to shoot birds all the time, and obviously the most common bird, or one of the most common birds, was passenger pigeons, right? And there were so many.
Fill the sky.
That would fill the sky.
Yeah.
And then I think the Migratory Bird Act came into effect. Anyway, but you're right. Around the Teddy Roosevelt period.
Yeah, because people killed off all the birds. There were so many passenger pigeons. They were fucking everywhere, and we killed them off for food.
and for feathers in people's hats, apparently.
Crazy.
Anyway.
Yeah, we're gross.
So what do you think? So so you have Teddy Roosevelt National
I like that
Park
you call me
System.
on stuff.
In services, you have things like migratory burdock. You have things like the ESA, which had its own unintended consequences, which we actually cover in our series about stopping importation but propelling domestic interest through breeding and the demand that's created through U.S. zoo systems that you see. So what happens next, I guess, is
it's really complex. And the problem is people are very dug in on their sides.
Yeah.
You have people that are very dug in with the animal liberation idea. They're very dug in with PETA and veganism and dug in with anti-hunting. And then there's people that are ranchers. And then there's people that are very dug into animals are our property. It's quite complicated. And it's just one of those things about being a human being. Is there's nuance to most things that are important to all of us.
Sure.
And the success of wildlife is important to all of us.
It's so true. And one of the things we've tried to do a little bit is bring the animal rights groups closer together with the conservation biologist groups so that they can kind of work together, because you're right.
Yeah.
They're so polarized.
Well, there's also the problem is, like we were talking about with BC. I didn't really finish my thought, but the reason why they outlawed bear hunting in BC is because the high population centers are all urban. So people don't have any experience with grizzly bears trying to eat their dogs, or grizzly bears killing hikers, or grizzly. They don't experience it. If they did, they'd be terrified. It's a giant predator, and you have no chance if it catches you out in the wild. I don't think we should ever kill off all the grizzly bears, but they should control the populations. And the way to control the populations ethically is you do it through hunting. As much as this seems counterintuitive to people that love wildlife, the right way to do it is you have informed, well-schooled biologists that really do a great job of managing the numbers that are in the area. And then you have people that spend enormous amounts of money to hunt those things. And then that money goes into maintaining the population and make sure that it's at a healthy balance. If there's too many bears, infanticide in bears is common. Almost all bears are cannibals. They eat their own babies. It's the whole thing is mad. And if they don't have enough food, or if the males come out of the if they're hibernating and they come out before the female does with her cubs, they'll actively seek out those cubs for food. And they will do less of that if there's less of them, and if there's more of a balance between predator and prey. And that's where it gets weird, because as a person who loves nature, who are we to say you should kill a certain amount of bears and a certain amount of wolves? That seems fucked. Like, we should just sort of like let it be what it is and enjoy it. But the problem is it leaks over into this strange world that we've created. And this is the reality. If you want to be able to go to Starbucks, if you want to be able to go outside and have a cheeseburger in an outdoor patio, you can't have fucking wolves everywhere. Okay? This is just reality, and we're accustomed to this artificial enclosure that we've created to keep human beings safe, and we've lost our perspective of what it means to be an animal in the world.
Yeah. No, it's, like calling elephants. If you don't manage elephants, they'll denude everything, and then they'll all die.
Well, there's that, but there's also they don't give a fuck who planted that food. If you're in a village and your whole family survival is dependent upon you getting these vegetables that you've planted, and then elephants come in and eat all your vegetables, you could very easily starve to death. And that's real too. Yeah. And people don't want to think about that, because you think of elephants. Oh, elephants are endangered. Yes, they are. Elephants are hunted for their ivory. Yes, they were. But also elephants are – Africa is fucking huge. There's not the same amount of black bears in San Francisco as there are in, rural Wyoming, right? It's because that's the environment which they live. If you went to San Francisco, you'd be like, oh, my God, black bears are extinct. But, go to New Jersey. They're everywhere, right? So it's not that the animal is that, you shouldn't have any of them. It's just like there should be places where they exist and places where they don't exist. And if you want to maintain a city, you're going to have to do something about the population of predators. You're going to have to do something. It's just like, how far outside of your city does human control radiate? Well, then you have ranchers, right? Okay, if you want to have a guy who grows cows so you can eat steak, you're going to have to be able to protect this guy's crop, or it's not going to be profitable for him to do this. You're going to have to be able to protect his animals.
I completely agree. Keep animal-human conflict. If you want to keep it at bay, keep wild animals in the wild.
Right.
I would question, and I think you're right, bringing or reintroducing grizzly bears into areas where there are high densities of humans. It's a recipe for trouble.
Well, it's also completely theoretical.
And right now it's theoretical, although they did just recently reintroduce grizzlies back into Washington State.
I don't mean theoretical in the sense that they haven't done it as far as what the outcome's going to be. Like, you really don't know. And especially if they get to a point where they become bold and they're not threatened by people at all anymore. And that's what happens in certain parts of the country. That's what happens when they have too many of them in a specific area. And then they compete for resources. And it can get weird.
The outcome of Tiger King, I mean, no one knows this, but I'll tell you this, or I don't think anyone knows it publicly. But, a few things happened. One thing, this federal law called Big Cat Public Safety Act was passed largely because of Tiger King. But the other thing we did just sort of privately is we donated $1 million to tiger conservation in India, and one of the countries where tigers are still doing quite well. And so we went to visit the program last September in India, and it just was so interesting because you were talking about bears attacking people. In India, they do live with tigers, and they do have, obviously, a certain amount of people that get killed every year. But the key is to keep enough prey within the area where these tigers are. It's when the local people, I guess, out hunt or compete with the prey that the tigers start going into more human, basically start looking at humans as something to eat. But anyway, I just bring that up because it was something that it was a byproduct of Tiger King that, it was something that we did just quietly as the people that I did Tiger King with, including you.
Not so quietly now.
Donated that money, not so quietly now.
Are you aware of the Sundarbans?
Yeah.
And the tiger attacks in the Sundarbans?
Absolutely.
Sundarbans are fascinating because hundreds of thousands of people have been killed by tigers
Beautiful
over the last
wetland.
several hundred years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also brackish water. And they think that might contribute to the aggression of the tigers. They're drinking like salty water and they're just constantly irritated. But they seem to kill people for sport.
Really?
Yeah, there's this one story of this group of men that are in a boat, and they're rowing this boat in the water, and I don't know if they're rowing it, but they're trying to get away from this tiger. This tiger jumps into the water, swims up to the boat, kills a guy, drags him to shore, jumps back in the water, swims out to the boat again, kills another guy, drags him to shore, and one guy gets away to safety. One or two guys got away to
And
safety.
were they wearing masks behind their heads?
They weren't, but yeah, that's also what they do.
Yeah.
When they walk around there and they do surveys of the animals. But it's also insanely difficult to find out where they are too, because the grass is so high and they're just built to fuck things up. That's what their job is. And if people live around them, people are on the menu. That's just what it is with tigers.
It didn't make it into Tiger King, but we filmed in southern Nepal, a place called Chitwan National Park, where tigers are doing very well, and they actually have armed guards with like machine guns to protect the tigers from poachers. We filmed there. But it's pretty remote, and I don't remember how many people got killed. But yeah, where there are tigers, people are going to, have problems. If there's high densities of people.
There's a reason why human beings don't live. You're not supposed to live there. You shouldn't be living with a tiger.
Well, there's also
they have to. They're stuck. They're fucked. But boy, we should figure out a way to develop some sort of an area there where they don't have to live like that.
Well, there's a lot of people, too.
I mean, it is amazing. It's amazing.
Right, India has 1 billion people.
It's amazing that in India there's still tigers at all, because it's the second most populated country in the world, or is it?
Yeah, I believe so.
It feels like when you're in India, there's people everywhere.
Right.
Like you think you're going off on some rural road, it's just there's people.
Right, but if you go into a place where the jungle is, like where the tigers live, it's like it's really hard to live there. Like, and then the people that are living there are they have no options, or they're the poorest. Yeah. And so they're living, in sort of a traditional way, out exposed, and then they have to figure out how to protect themselves from these enormous stealthy cats that are sneaking around everywhere they go. Fuck.
But you see plenty of cows, which is amazing, by the way. Just kind of roaming, just roaming these kind of
that
windy
is
roads.
I would
Sacred
really
cows.
love to know what the origin of the sacred cow is. Really love to know the origin of that. That's one of the most fascinating things, that you have a place where people are starving and they choose not to eat cows.
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
And they stop in the traffic stopping, which is in these roads that have no lanes, and they're all just kind of. That's what I always found the first
India's
visit.
wild.
But it's so crazy that they stick to this one thing.
Yeah.
Like I was just watching this news report of this group of people that were not Hindu. I think they were of some other religion, and they lived in India, and they got arrested for killing cows. So they had cows in their yard. They were arrested for them, and they bulldozed their homes.
Oh wow!
Yeah, see if you can find that, James.
Oh, they're also probably Muslim.
I believe they were. Yeah,
But more people die from what in India in terms of wildlife? Is it snakes?
probably mosquitoes.
Yeah,
I mean,
mosquitoes
of course,
probably.
mosquitoes.
Yeah.
But after that, snakes or tigers?
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't think it's tigers. I think the Sundarbans is the area where they get jacked pretty regularly.
Right.
But and also, how many people are doing surveys on how many people are missing? When you're going into these like very remote areas, how many
Yeah.
people know?
Yeah.
Indian authorities bulldoze homes of 11 people after finding beef in fridges.
Oh, incredible!
That is
Slaughter of
incredible.
cows, which Hindus worship as a deity, is banned in most of India, as is consumption of their meat. Isn't that fucking fascinating?
Well, you cut down an oak tree in California, you're
Right,
it's
but
a
they're not
felony.
going to bulldoze your fucking house.
You know,
Isn't that nuts?
depends what kind of tree.
Isn't that nuts? People found beef in their fridge and cows in their backyard. So they
Wait, so in
bulldoze their
India,
homes.
you can eat a hamburger?
You cannot.
Yeah, they don't really.
Really? I was just in
I
India.
think you can get it in like hotels and stuff, but
I
you
think
can't get it
so.
at like a.
Oh wow, they allow it in hotels.
Yeah, you can get it at a.
I mean,
Maybe
I
it's
was
another
just in
animal.
India.
Well,
so-
you can eat lamb.
So-
You can eat sheep. You can eat other different animals. You just
God,
can't eat cows.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't even think of that when I was there.
A lot of people think it has its roots in psychedelic mushrooms. That psilocybin grows on cow manure, and that these people would
Oh,
just
wow.
because one of the oldest, what is it? I think it's called Choctaw Hayuk. It's like one of the oldest known civilizations, which was a cattle worshipping civilization, and they had like these why were people who are fucking starving to death, like barely getting by? Why were they like into worshipping cows? Well, if that's where you got all your mushrooms. It completely makes sense. It's almost the only thing that makes
Yeah.
sense. It's almost the only thing that you could, especially if you have like ancient stories of soma and these different psychedelic compounds that the Hindus would eat, and these different psychedelic notions or potions rather that were talked about, where we don't really know what the composition of them was. But we do know that psilocybin mushroom has a long history of use, and it's really common to find them growing on cow manure. Why else would poor people that don't have any food not eat this one animal?
I don't know, but I've seen mushrooms in cow manure.
Getting very confusing information on the burger and India
They
situation.
have chicken.
That-
You eat chicken all you want, baby.
They definitely seem to have burgers, but I don't know that they're making them with like
Beef?
ground beef. That
Right. Could be like a lamb burger.
Should be. It could be all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff that they call burger.
Right. When you get Indian food, it's always lamb.
It's a bit more Western now. I mean, if you're going like kind of more,
Not to these people.
Yeah.
Fucking
know.
these people wasn't Western enough.
I mean-
They
Yeah.
bulldozed their fucking house a couple of months
that's
ago.
remarkable.
That's incredible.
I bet
that-
you they're
yeah.
also Muslim though. That's also.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah,
It's like the
there's-
Uyghurs get treated.
Yeah,
in China.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that,
Yeah, I'm sure there's some of that too. Yeah, but it's just our relationship with animals is very bizarre, and I think most people have like a really stunted understanding of it. They're never really around wild animals. It's a squirrel or a pigeon or something like that.
It's
Like
kinda-
they don't
it's-
see
we're
animals.
further
It's
and further
kinda-
things
it's
the point
kind
you
of
make.
perverse,
Yeah.
our relationship with
it
animals.
is. Well, so cities, as much as I love them, they are perverse. They're strange, and they've done us a lot of harm psychologically. They've created people that are much more vulnerable than they've ever been before. They're soft and lazy and entitled, and everything comes easy to them. And I don't think that's normal for human beings either. And you can get food anywhere you want, and all the worst kinds of food. And you're in a prison of your own choosing. You're going from one closed environment to another closed environment, riding around your car or the subway or whatever you're doing, and we're completely disconnected to what it meant to be a human being for hundreds of thousands of years. And it happened in a blink of an eye. In a couple of 100 years, all of a sudden we're fucked.
Yeah.
And we're trapped in this bizarre system. And in this system, occasionally we interact with animals, and our understanding of it and what we think of it, what we think it is so and we have anthropomorphization through Yogi Bear and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and we're so weird with the way we interact with animals. And every piece of it.
I was so lucky to grow up in nature, and I take it for granted now.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up mostly in Northern California, but I was like a feral kid. My mother always said, "Eric, you were feral." We didn't plan anything. I would spend my days fishing and hiking in the creeks.
What part of Northern California?
In Sonoma area.
Okay.
But
it's beautiful up there.
But then I spent 40-something years in New York City. But I never lost that, what you're talking about, and that interest and love of going out into nature. But I think you're right. Today, people don't have the experience I had. So many kids are from an urban, world, and they can't connect.
We don't even know what it's like. But I would imagine if you went to a city, your average city, like a New York City or Los Angeles, the average person there, what percentage of them spend any time at all alone in the woods?
Yeah.
Very few.
Yeah, we've lost our connection. I think we had this conversation with Carl Eric recently, which kind of put it really well for me. So much of the conversations you have is, oh, we're going to go connect with nature. We're going to Botswana for the summer and, do tourism. But what you really can do is put a bird feeder outside your window and connect with nature that way. And you'll see lots of different birds. And
But you must have grown up in nature in some way, or no?
Not really.
Okay.
No, not really.
But why do you then have such a connection to it in a good way?
Because I like interesting things.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. The fact that so few people engage in it is also interesting to me, because I'm fascinated by whatever the pull of urban life is. Like, what is the gravity of urban life that it's changed us into these soft, non-self-sufficient beings that is completely relying on some strange system that's ultimately polluting the world and decimating of its resources. Yeah. Like, what are we? Like, we're weird. And time I spend in the woods, in the wilderness, just being out there, you get a different sense of what life actually is. It's so extraordinary to see wild animals in the wild, like wild deer and elk and bears, and see them existing. It's incredible. It's better than any movie. It's like it gives you a vitamin that you didn't know you needed. Yeah. Like the feeling that you get when you go out in the sun, like maybe you've been indoors in the winter and then there's a nice sunny day in the spring. Everybody's outside in the park like, give me my vitamins, right? Doesn't it feel like that? You're lying down, you're like, give me my vitamins. That's what it feels like on a nice sunny day in like Central Park, right? That is there's a vitamin that we get in the wilderness that we don't know we're lacking in.
Yeah.
I think it's a part of being a person. I think it's a part of being interconnected to every life form that exists wherever we are. And we don't think we are because we live in an apartment and we play Nintendo and we're locked into this thing that human beings have created, but we're missing something. And it's not as extreme as Tonka being trapped in that lady's basement, but it's in the neighborhood. There's something about it that's real similar. There's something about it that's real weird, where our own prison of our own choosing is not good for us.
And it's interesting, most all of the characters in Tiger King and Chimp Crazy have never seen chimps or tigers in the wild or had any interest.
That's crazy.
They were just interested. They didn't have the.
They just wanted control.
They didn't have the intellectual curiosity that you would think they would have to see them in the wild.
I'm not shocked.
Yeah.
I do have a question though, really important. The chimp with the McNuggets, chicken nuggets, does he open up the sauce and dip?
Yes.
Did you show him dipping?
He peels. Yeah.
Well, in that
show him
case,
dipping.
I think he just went like this. But
he sucks it out.
But they are dexterous enough, and they have eaten so much McDonald's. They do know how to do that.
So they do dip the nuggets in the sauce.
I don't think it's in that shot.
No,
But
I've seen they actually peel it with their mouth.
Yeah.
They peel the wrapper off.
Right.
They don't like wrappers.
But do they dig in with the nugget and get it in the
I think they just
honey
squeeze it
mustard
in their
sauce?
mouth. Oh, not dipping. No.
I like that question.
That's a good one.
We were confused.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to dip? And then it cut away. We don't know, is he fucking dipping?
I mean, the sauce toss moment was just so surreal.
Amazing. You want your sauce?
Real.
Here's your sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so surreal.
Incredible.
They know too much. Like just the communication. Get that piece of paper, and he gets the paper and brings it back. They knew too much. It's too creepy. It's so weird. I mean, you guys did an amazing job of capturing it, and thank God you found that one nutty lady because she really glues it all together. But everybody should watch it. It's really good, and everybody should watch it also because you have to know that that's a thing. Like you know, if you don't know what people are really capable of until you watch like a serial killer documentary, and you go, "Oh, Jesus Christ, that's the thing."
Yeah.
So you don't know that people are keeping chimps in their house until you watch your show, and you go, "Oh, that's a thing." Like,
But it wakes you up from human confinement to the symptom you just described of urbanization and coastal bubbles.
Yeah.
It's kind of people are like, oh my God, is this America? Like, what are you? Of course, like go outside 45 minutes away from where you live.
Right.
I didn't know it was a thing, and I've been involved with animal people my whole life. So yeah, it's a thing. Monkey moms.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it's
if you
it's
let
a
people
common
do
thing,
it, they'll
but
do it.
There's some strange obsessions in this world.
Yeah, if you give people free license to do it, I mean, it's one of the great things about being an American. You have so many freedoms. There's so many things you could do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like at a certain point in time, we got to wake up and go, hey, putting a dolphin in a fucking swimming pool is evil. You know, and one day when AI can transcribe dolphin communication, we're going to probably realize they're as smart as us. And that's where it gets really, really, really scary, is that we have been engaging in a form of indentured slavery. We've captured them. We've raised them from the time they're a baby, they've been in captivity. The whole thing is completely disgusting. And yet it's a normal part of life. And until Blackfish, most people weren't even aware that it was a thing or what it actually was. When you see orcas behave in the wild versus the way you see them trapped in those swimming pools, it's torturous. Their skin's falling off and the whole thing.
Yeah.
But think about this. 100 years ago, you can go to the Bronx Zoo and see, a boy in a cage out of Benga.
It was
Right,
a, it was
right,
a,
right,
photo,
right.
a
photo-
West
the photo
African
is
pygmy that
remarkable.
They kept in a cage.
Right, what year was that?
1918, is it
Or
19,
20s?
Was it 20s maybe? You should
He
have this
he
photo. It's
ultimately shot
incredible.
his brains out. Even people then knew that Otabanga, this basically a indigenous man from West Africa with these
1912 or something like that. I want to
anyway,
say.
but even then people were disturbed to see a human being next to a gorilla in the
And he
Bronx
was in
Zoo.
a cage by himself?
I think he was in the ape house at the Bronx Zoo.
Well, first he was brought for the World's Fair on display.
Wow.
To show. Here you go.
There he is.
There you go.
They shaved his teeth down to be more like fangs.
Oh, my God.
Like
So
shark teeth.
1904. There it is.
So what year at the Bronx Zoo? 1904.
So he died in 1916. That's right. Okay, so he was
Oh,
an
so
exhibit
the
in 1904.
Turn of the century, yeah.
Yep.
Jesus.
So that's our history.
Right.
1964, Bronx Zoo. This incredible. I love this image. It was an exhibition, right? The world's most dangerous animal, and it's a reflection.
Oh, yeah,
It's a
yeah,
mirror with bars, and you walk into it and you see yourself.
Wow.
But
It's
they
a
were
really cool.
They were
it's a
conscious
really
of
cool-
that in
we've been trying to find it.
1964.
1964.
Well, it was 20 years after we dropped a fucking couple of nuclear bombs.
yeah. This is a
But how
provocative
cool
thing.
is that image?
That is cool. You would never have that today.
The most dangerous animal in the world is us, which is, so true.
Well, it certainly is numerically,
Yeah.
and also just the impact we have overall. We're a sketchy group. But we know more about us because of stuff like what you guys have done. So thank you very much.
Cool.
It was really fun talking to you. And did HBO fund this, or did you guys bring it to HBO after it was done?
We probably went midstream. So we kind of typically what we do is we figure out if we have something. We self-fund and develop something until we get to a point where we think it's ready.
I mean, Tiger King, I almost finished it before I brought it to anybody.
Oh, wow.
So
I think now we have the ability to kind of control output in terms of control of what the ultimate product can be. It was a little bit harder back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's we kind of figure out if it's worth it or not, and then we take it out.
But Joe, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
My pleasure. You guys nailed it twice. Chimp Crazy is really good.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course, Tiger King was awesome too. And what I said, I really mean. I think you guys are doing something that's you're giving us a better understanding of humans, through this very strange lens of watching these very bizarre people and their psychological misfortunes. Like whatever it is about them, whatever unfortunate aspect of their their mind, the way they interface with the world, allows them to do that. It gives us a better understanding of ourselves. I really think so.
Oh, so I appreciate you having
Yeah.
us.
My
Seriously.
pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Really cool.
And please finish the show.
I will. I will. I was just bummed out last night. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you
man.
very much, guys.
Thanks so
Bye.
much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.